writing is really bad, unfortunately.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the newest book chat with Benghis, with friend of the channel and newly published epic fantasy author Zammar Ahmer. Let's go look at the new release. It just came out. Riven Earth, book 1 of a duology, with the second book on the way soon. Right? Congratulations on reaching this end of your journey with these books. How does it feel?
Thanks so much, man. It's been amazing. Like genuinely, I'm kind of like a nobody, right? Like I've been like a lurker in this community for so long. I've watched channels, I've left comments, but I've been so like heads down in this book for like in these books, I should say, for the last year and a half that I didn't get time to like really interact, to really go on social media and like start building this community, which I should have done. Like that's what you're meant to do as an author. And it's like network and do all that stuff, but so I just kind of came out of nowhere, and I was like, guys, I have a book. Please, someone like it, and like the reception's been so great, man. Like so many people like yourself, like so many people have just welcomed me on board, and they're like, come on over, man. This is a great community, and it's just like that. I think has been the best part of the experience. So yeah, it feels amazing. I'm on the clouds.
Oh, I love to hear it. And now that the books are done, and you can hopefully relax a little bit and throw yourself into the community and get the name out there and get the books out there. And I know I'm going to give them a try because I love a duology. This is just a duology, right? It's just two books. I don't want to get that wrong. So there are not many fantasy duologies out there, and so I love a good tight series, and I'm very interested in trying it. Although I do have a question: is there an audiobook eventually on the way? Do you have plans in the works for? I know you're a huge audio listener, so I know you've probably been thinking about it.
I love audiobooks, man. I would love to do an audiobook. I think financially, it's like very hard to do at the moment.
Yeah.
So I hope to do it, but it's probably not like this year or anytime soon.
Okay.
I wish.
I love just doing hybrid reads where I have the print book I can open up and listen immersively with, and then also just to like when I'm going on walks or doing chores or driving in the car, just throw on the audiobook. And I'm a madman because I will buy two versions of every book I read because I like just listening or reading one book at a time to be fully immersed in it.
And you have that. I think most people do like one book on audio and one book in print, right? Like I think that's
very normal. That's very rational, very responsible as well.
I don't know.
So I just get so passionate about my reads. I want to maximize my experiences with them. And so I usually just do one at a time. And but when I have done just print reads, like I did The Severing Sun by Von Roycroft last year, so that was also self-pub where the audio is not out yet. I know Vaughn was thinking about looking for narrators, maybe getting that out eventually, but I wanted to give that a read since I had been communicating with Vaughn, and so I don't read too many self-pub books because I have like so many trad pub series and reads that I already have like own the books for, and I have many years worth of books like just in my closet waiting to be read. But I read that one in print and had an audio only read going, which was actually I think Red Seas Under Red Skies at the time, because like I love the Michael Page audio for the Gentleman Bastards books. So if I give yours a read, I'll try to do the same thing where I'm doing something in audio that I definitely only want to do audio, and so I could give your book the full attention in print.
Make sure you pick like a horrible book, like a 1-star rating, and then that way you have like something bad and my one stands out,
there's a few options I could go for that. I absolutely hated the first binding. I read and listened to it the whole way, and it's one of the few audiobook experiences I really did not like with the narration.
Interesting.
And I thought the narration itself was annoying, but maybe it was just the actual tone of the writing, because it wasn't working in either format, and maybe the narrator was doing a good job with the material. But I'm even though I hated the story and the experience, I'm still like, I rarely DNF things. I'm so curious where it's going to go in the second book.
Nice.
It's I could try to give that one a listen.
Yeah.
And while I read Riven Earth, and then you'd almost be guaranteed to stand out positively with that.
Yeah, I'm all for it. You know, like I know, one of my friends was beta reading my book for me. He very kindly gave me a lot of feedback, but at the same time, he was reading Age of Madness, and I was like, "This is the worst. This is the worst. You're going to be comparing my book to Age of Madness, like narrated by Stephen Payne."
No. Yeah. That's a rough juxtaposition going on. Just a master of character and story and sharp, clever, witty prose and Abercrombie. And Age of Madness too. That's after he's like a seasoned author.
Right, exactly. It's like
he's many books. Yeah. You need the other lesser juxtapositions going on, but I'm excited to try it. I've seen some great things being said about it already on BookTube, and Esme gave it a glowing review, right?
Yeah. No, I mean, she made my week. To tell
you. Yeah, and she's stingy with the glowing praise. Like a lot of her reads will be just like 3-star area. Like she's not just giving everything 4 and 5 stars and glowing praise, and so it really hit with her. Was that review that came out? Yeah.
Esme is like a genuine hero, because it's like for people like me where no one's ever heard of me, so like why would you read my book instead of like the billion other awesome books, trad and self-pub, that exist out there? And Esme is like, I read like 100 million books a year, so I need to fill up my TBR, give it to me. I'm like, please like it. And she reads it, and like I was really happy to hit for her. And
you're right. There are heroes like Esme in the community who are self-pub heroes, where they're just reading so many of those books that to get it out on people's radar. For people like me who we don't read as much quantity, like I'll read on a good week, I can get through a couple books. Sometimes if it's chunkier books, I'll just read around one book a week, and so I can't just get through that many series and try that many new books and new authors in any given month and year. And so it feels like I have to be picky and choosy, and I have to use filters like reviewers or booktubers that I really align with in my taste. And so I rarely go for a read where it hasn't been tested yet. And
exactly.
So people like Esme are absolute heroes for that.
Absolute heroes. And then if he likes it, for instance, then suddenly you are like, hey, maybe I could check this out, and I'm like, yes, do it.
Oh, totally. Oh man, but congratulations. And then is this the end of the series, or is this it, the 2 books?
Yeah, this is it. The story finishes with the 2 books. I was working on like a prequel novella, but it's completely like a bonus. It's like a cozy story, and I was gonna say, like, if you sign up to my mailing list, I'll send this to you for free. So that's kind of in the background.
Oh yeah,
but like
oh no, that seems like a solid move. That's the Ryan Cahill
it's like a self-pub playbook kind of thing, right? Like
Tiago Abdullah. I think it's a really nice thing to be able to offer people a taste of the series and your writing for free in a shorter form. So that'd be cool. Get a prequel novella in there, and then the duology. Are you like so you're if you're doing writing or a next writing project, that would be it? You're not starting on something completely new yet?
Well, I mean, this is a problem, right? It's like I feel obligated to write this prequel novella, but at the same time, I've got another story going in my head.
Wow.
Like, the thing that happens with me is like I just get obsessed, dude. Like the story like takes over my life. That's what happened with these books. It's like I only wrote them because I couldn't like stop thinking about it. I was like in this world, like when you read a book and like you're super immersed and like you're there, right? Like that experience. I've never had a reading experience which is as immersive as a writing experience.
Wow, that's so interesting, because I just have none of that going on internally. Like I don't create stories like kind of just spontaneously. I don't have a drive to create my own stories yet, at least. And so that's so interesting to hear, because that's very different from from my own experience.
I know it sucks, man. Like it just takes over you, and like you can't stop thinking, like, I gotta get this down, man. I gotta write it, and then next thing you know, you have 2 books.
So I know you are a voracious reader of modern fantasy, and we've read a lot of the same authors and series, and I want to chat about all of that and try to compare our favorites. But I'm curious, when you were in the real like heavy writing phase, the drafting of the first drafts or the initial revisions, like were you still doing reading or listening on the side, or have you only been picking back up since you kind of got closer to publishing?
Yeah, so like this is one thing which I'm hoping you can help me with. Like I am in the reading slump of my life since I started writing. So like here's the thing, right? Like I love listening to audiobooks, and like that right now, that's like the way I feel the most immersed with any kind of reading, because I was so deep in the writing that I feel like whenever I try to read print, it's like I can't help but go into like editing mode, right?
Wow.
And sometimes that's like, why did they write this sentence like this? Like, why is this paragraph structured like that? Right. And other times it's like, holy, this is so good, but like I can't appreciate the story because I'm like looking at it too close, like looking at the word. Like I was reading Wizard of Earthsea, and it was just like, it blew my mind how beautiful her prose is. Like I couldn't. It
was so elegant. Yeah.
So elegant, so beautiful. And like I just kept reading the same sentence over and over because I'm like, oh, it was like my mind's exploding.
Wow,
I couldn't appreciate the story.
And with the audiobook, like unless you pause and rewind, you have to actively do that. It'll just keep you moving through the story.
Yeah, exactly.
So, and it does make sense that seeing the visual kind of print would set off the same kind of thinking you do when you're writing, because you're looking at print when you're writing and editing. Exactly, and so it makes sense that the audiobooks would just provide this immersive outlet. And even though when I read in print, I'm not really trying to turn on my analytical brain, and I'm usually able to get immersed, but even so, I still think right now I am preferring listening to reading in print. Like it's easier for me to get immersed. I enjoy hearing the narrator's performances, because when I read, I don't put a lot of, I think I read actually faster than I listen, and I don't put a lot of like expression into my internal kind of voicing of when I read in print. So I'm just like racing through usually, and I when I'm listening, I'm taking more time with it, and I'm hearing these awesome narrators' performances that are adding so much liveliness to it, and that I feel has been really, over the past bunch of years, just helping me get the most out of these reads. So I'm right there with you in the immersive nature of the audiobooks. So it's such a great thing that you've had that.
Yeah, no, it's been a lifesaver, because I don't know what I would do without it, to be honest.
Now you say you've been slumping, but I know that you've been reading some really cool things. You're in Shogun right now, which definitely one of my favorite reads of the year and of my life. I just love that so much. And
it's so good. Like I'm blown away by how good it is.
Oh yes. Yes.
I thought going in. So okay, I think I'm on chapter 41. I think I sent you that screenshot yesterday from chapter 40, and I was like, what's going on? So chapter 41, it's maybe the last third of the book. But I thought it would be like a really grand, epic, like like a very like zoomed out kind of thing.
Yeah. Instead, it's very personal.
Very personal, very intimate, and like
and it doesn't cover a lot of time. It doesn't cover a lot of time and events. Like each scene could cover many pages, and you just get every second and minute of everyone's internal monologue from one point of view, and then it'll shift to other people's point of views in the scene, and you'll just get these long internal monologues and dialogues back and forth.
Narrator.
Where like so each scene is given so much time to breathe and develop. I normally read a lot of faster paced books where we're just changing, like chapters are quicker and shorter. We're changing kind of setting and moving through the narrative events much more quickly. And I found myself just loving slowing down with Shogun and just settling in, and just it felt like I was living at a different speed when I was reading Shogun, and it really helped immerse me in like the year 1600. And it doesn't feel like the modern world.
No,
which sure. I love. I love being transported to another time and place where I feel like I am no longer living in, New Jersey of 2024.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing that like historical fiction is. For us, it could often just be historical fantasy, like the worlds are often so foreign, especially like Japan back then. And I mean, Shogun has been absolutely brilliant. I mean, the dialogue, this is one thing I noticed about it, is it's very light on the narrative. Like it's basically like every scene is just dialogue, right? Like one person's talking, and it's this wonderful use of the omniscient narrator, which you just don't see anymore. And I absolutely.
Interestingly, I'm in the middle of a series right now, the Dandelion Dynasty, that does take the omniscient narrator perspective approach. I think it's the only modern fantasy series that I've read, at least, that has that kind of perspective and style. And so it's different, but I'm not finding it as immersive as Shogun. It's taking the opposite approach, where it's being the grand scale kind of historical epic, where it's moving through events and places and scenes very quickly and doesn't dwell on them like Shogun does, covering just like a tiny bit of time. I mean, Shogun even ends before like the major, huge historical climactic moment. So, I don't mean to spoil anything, but like, all that to say that it just doesn't cover that much time. It's barely covering any time. And so it's different. It feels different, even though it is kind of that omniscient POV hopping kind of style. And I'm not connecting to it. I know Matt's here. He loves the Dandelion Dynasty. I'm liking it. All the books have been kind of at that 4-star level where I'm engaged, but I haven't felt so invested, like emotionally at all. I usually, when I start to feel so emotional investment and emotions while reading, that's when I started like, oh, definitely 5-star. But so far, Dandelion has just been sitting in that, like, I'm engaged and I respect everything that's going on, but I haven't fallen in love with the story, which is okay. Not all series can be our favorites. Yeah, Matt's saying Dandelion.
It's Matt's second
for a battle. Series, next page, the battle, and next page onto the next battle. Very true. Very true. So I forgot to highlight this comment. Shogun made me move back Shadows of the Apt by a month. So Matt has been stalled on Shadows of the Apt. He loved the first 2 books, and then it's been months where I've been waiting for him to continue, because this is a very underread series. It just.
I mean, the funny thing is, I also moved it back for Shogun. So.
oh, really? You're gonna start Shadows of the Apt? Oh, cool.
From your videos. So.
Oh, awesome. But I can't be angry that he moved Shadows of the Apt back with Shogun. Shogun is a masterpiece, and it's a chunker. It's a big read. It's like almost 50 hours on audio. It's
54.
Oh, more. Okay.
But I mean, that's credit worthy, right? Like you spend your credit on that, and it's
totally. And Lister is one of the best narrators out there. It's just
such good narration, man. It's
amazing voice. He brings a great rhythm to it, and he does dialogue voices, like individual character voices, so well. He really stood out to me when he did the first 3 Malazan books with just doing hundreds of distinctive voices that brought those first few Malazan books to life. So, Lister is a gem. Yeah, he's great.
This is my first time listening to him, and I've had such good audio experiences because I had him and Jonathan Keeble from Warlord.
Yes,
they've got to be too fast, right? Like surely.
Yes. Oh, definitely. Keeble in the Warlord Chronicles specifically just gives one of the most jaw-dropping, emotional performances I've ever heard.
I was like,
what? Yeah. I felt like Keeble himself was getting very emotional.
Oh yeah.
And between that and the events, like I was getting really emotional. Like I almost couldn't like continue reading at some point in Enemy of God. When Arthur, no spoilers, but I'll indirectly reference, like when Arthur thinks he's going to do something romantic and he's about to like do something that he thinks is gonna be good, and we know it's like a train wreck, like a slow motion. Like that was one of the most tense, gripping sections of any book of my entire life, and I couldn't believe what was happening at the end of that book. But the magic of that series is though I think the character writing for the narrator Durfel.
Oh yeah, it's magnificent, dude. Yeah. Like I just like realized at some point, I think somewhat during Enemy of God, where I was like, he's changed. Like he's changed a lot, right? And like you see like how he saw Arthur in book 1 versus how he sees Arthur in book 2 and 3, and like he's just growing into himself and like his own responsibilities and his own priorities, and like it's just so magnificently done. And like I'm a sucker for framing narratives, man. Like I'm all over framing narratives, and like I think that's one of the best ones.
Yeah, it doesn't overdo it because they're like long sections, but at the beginning of every new section, we go back to Dervil in the present day.
Yeah,
and when he's telling the story, I love those scenes because his kind of rapport that he has with, oh my god, who's the character that he's telling the story to?
The queen. I don't remember her name.
Yeah, I can't remember her name, but they have like a great kind of like friendly, respectful, almost flirtatious rapport. Like, but kind of like, it's just, I love that part. And you're right, the framing narrative adds a lot.
Yeah, because there's like so much melancholy when he's like telling this story, and I think like the narrator adds so much to it, right? Because he's like speaking with like this voice, because it's like it's kind of like it's almost like the central theme of the Arthurian legend is like this love for what is lost and like the past, and like respecting all that, and like you just get it from Derfel's voice in those modern day scenes. So
like when he's thinking about some of the important like possessions that he still keeps to himself, even though he's not supposed to have anything. Like it's so impactful.
And then he's like talking about Samson, and like he's so passive aggressive about it.
Yeah. Also, it's so hard to believe that priest is still like alive and kind of interacting with Dervil later, like based on it's wild that he made it through out of everyone there. But it's interesting that you really love frame narratives, because I haven't given too much thought to that style choice in particular as something that I love, but I think I do tend to like it. I love it in Warlord. I love it in the Fitz books of Realm of the Elderlings, and I love it in Sun Eater. So there might be something to that it really adds an extra dimension that brings more emotional poignance, maybe that helps.
I think so. It's always a trade-off, right? Because I think some people say, a lot of people don't like frame narratives because they say it takes away the tension, because this character survives till the end, right? But I don't think that's necessarily a big deal, because I think I really like the idea of just being told the story by this person and like everything they've gone through. And they kind of like hint at like some of the pain that still lingers, and like the very first pages of Assassin's Apprentice, when he's talking about, and I think he says like his pen like wobbles out of his hand, and like he remembers all the pain of his life, and I was like, what happened to you, bro? Like, tell me.
Oh man.
And then it's like chill.
Yeah, it's so intense. I also kind of like it because like I don't have to worry that storyteller character is like going to die like during the events of the story. Like it takes some of
They're not gonna get Game of Thrones.
Although Hobb and Orakio really played around with that in fun, interesting ways, and still were able to surprise the reader. Even though you think like, oh, the storyteller character is always going to come out of it okay. That is not the case. But have you read any Sun Eater yet?
No, dude. This is like, Sun Eater is one of those series which I know is like right up my alley. Like I know I'm gonna love it.
Yeah.
Right. So then there's two problems. The first is that I'm very contrarian, which sucks. I hate being contrarian, but it's like I can't help it. So when everyone else is like Sun Eater, I'm like, maybe.
So that's why you were very quick to pick up on Empire of Salt, because no one else is reading
that. I was like, yo, I gotta get in on this. But that's a small thing. Like I'm definitely gonna read Sun Eater. I'm gonna love it. I wanted to like finish with my books first.
Yeah,
then I was like, then I can just like really get lost in this series, which I'm pretty confident is gonna hit hard for me.
And if you waited this long to start, temper expectations, yeah, that always, like, I was happy that I read Sun Eater with no expectations, so I read it back before it took off, when it was just Mike's book reviews who had put it on people's radar. He was the only person like in the booktube sphere that I'd seen reviewed it that I follow, and read it with few expectations. I'd heard book one was slow, and I ended up loving the slow, deliberately paced book one. Like,
I've heard
that
too, that book one is slow, and I was like, sign me up.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
Perfect.
No, it is a genuinely slow book for like a modern fantasy read. And it reads definitely much more like fantasy than sci-fi. So I think Rockio calls it sci-fantasy, and I think it's more for fantasy readers really than sci-fi like only readers, I would say. But yeah, book one was slow, and I loved it. And the fact that I really loved the like a slower paced, like just character driven book like that, like I knew I was that series was for me. And then, man, book two really picked things up and started to take it into some cool places. And then book three, just Rockio hit his stride where it is just one of those masterpiece kind of staggering achievements that I just it was like a perfect read for me. And I've enjoyed all the books since. But you've waited so long that like you might as well wait until the last book comes out like next year, instead of like jumping and say,
or
yeah, he's working on it right now. So I think he might try to finish it by the end of this year, and maybe release it sometime next year. But so it'll be all done, you know, in the not too distant future, probably, if he keeps up the pace. He's halfway through writing the draft of it, I think.
Nice. Yeah, I do really like binging.
Yes, me too. A lot of people like Matt, who is here, like he does like read one book of a series a month or spread it out even further. And he reads so many books, and I'm like, oh my God. For me, that creates more interference in the story, like that I'm keeping track of all these different plots and characters. When I cannot binge, I almost always feel like I am missing out on having a better experience. Like, for instance, let me grab, where's that one? Oh, where's the other book? Well, I can't. I have too many books that I place in random places on my shelf. But like the Red Winter Chronicles is a trilogy by Ed McDonald, released by Tor, and the last book is coming out soon this year. But I've read it each book as a new release, and just like, even if it's just 1 year in between, like a 1 year gap, I felt like I had lost all my connection to the story. Like, I was so immersed in it after book one, but then I had to like, oh, what are these world building details, and just it takes time to like get really immersed, I think, in someone's mind and in like a narrator's perspective, and to sink into the author's writing style. Like, that's why binge is so great, I think, because you're so just used to the writer's style and the characters and the little plot details that you can catch if you binge. The world building is fresh. Man, I'm with you. I love a good binge.
Oh yeah,
man, there's nothing like it. I binged for like months at a time before I made my channel. I did more of these big binges, and like I for many months was just binging Malazan books. And same thing for Wheel of Time. I just did like a 3-month binge where that was basically all I read, and I had a great time with that story in that way.
That's like, I think you're more immersed. I mean, I guess some people get tired of the same world and they want something different, and then come back to this when they're fresh. Personally, I like to, like you said, like just be fully immersed and like be there with that style. You don't have to like get used to it again after one book, and then you can really enjoy it.
There's another aspect that I don't hear too many people talk about, but you might also, as a fellow binger, feel this way. But like, I like not having too many different stories that I'm actually thinking about or caring about. Like, I feel like if I'm thinking about a lot of different stories and characters and worlds, that each one is getting a little bit less of my attention and thinking. Like, that's why I love just reading and listening, like in print, and listening to the same book at the same time, because when I'm not reading, I might be thinking about that, and just my attention is not divided between multiple stories. So same thing with binging. I just, like, when I'm not reading, I'm thinking about those characters in the world and imagining it, and a binge just allows for that so much. It's one of the nice advantages of standalones, is that, like, you can fit them in and have a complete full experience, and and then it's over and done. Like
move on, and then
you said you're in a reading slump because of your writing. So you mentioned that I need to choose a TBR for you. Have you read this one yet?
Okay, I have it on audio because it's on Audible Plus. So it's in the library, and this one was like, I was trying to debate. I was like, do I read Shogun first or do I read GGK first?
Oh,
and I was thinking,
can't go wrong.
I know, and I was thinking of going for Under Heaven first, but I'm not sure because the premise of that seemed really interesting to me. But then I know that everyone loves A Song for Our Bond, so I was also wondering if maybe this is like the favorites. Maybe I should come to it later. Like start somewhere else.
Don't. That's what I was worried about. That's why I thought starting with this one was good, because I figured like Lions of Alversan might be, the peak experience with GGK, or Brightness Long Ago, or Under Heaven. This one was kind of off my radar for being like what was going to be my favorite. And I would be shocked at this point, if any GGK book could overtake this. Like, I think this was my first GGK read and probably will be my favorite. And maybe because of how special it was to come to this new author that I love so much, like for the first time. But this one was just the perfect book for me. Like, it just did everything so well. The plotting, the character work, the writing, the setting work. It was just firing on all cylinders in a way that I don't think any other book has for me. Some competitors like Shogun definitely like is similar in being so amazing on all of those areas too. Like, just having no weak point to it. But man, so as a TBR slump buster, like I imagine any GGK would do the trick. So you can't go wrong with probably any. But I've only read one, so this would be my recommendation for sure. And the audio is great. Ewan Morton is a great narrator. I don't know if you ever heard him before, but he is great with this. And there's like a bunch of songs, and he really sings them, and he has like a beautiful singing voice that added to the immersion of it, because he was able to provide the voicings to these different troubadour and like singer bard characters.
I didn't realize those songs.
And there's not like many of them, but it is a very important aspect of the story, and each one tends to have a really high impact, and they're not like that long, but he is. I would definitely say that the audio added to my experience of this. I did a lot immersively. But if you find that like you're able to follow along with everything just with the audio, I imagine it's going to be an awesome way to do this book. So that would be one slump buster for you.
Nice. Yeah, I know. I should clarify. My slump is like very specific to sight reading. Like my audio, I don't have an audio slump. I have a sight reading slump.
Oh, interesting. As far as reading in print, like, do you have a print copy of this one?
I have an ebook.
An ebook of it? Okay, I would, for this one, it helped me, like, if I listened to a chapter, I felt like I didn't fully get everything from it that I could. So I would go back and like reread the chapter in print as well after I listened to it. And I felt like, I caught richness in the language or imagery I missed before, or little details I missed. And so it helps me to kind of almost like double back and read this twice. Yeah. Mac is loving this showing off of our bone. Yeah. This
nice. That's a beautiful cover too. I haven't seen
it. Is. Yeah. I grabbed this used online on eBay after I loved the book so much, and I saw I like this cover. Let me try to grab one for the shelves. Nice. But yeah, this one is a good one to do along with the audio, or even to like read the chapter and then listen to the audio, maybe second. That would probably be even better. But like I really, more than any other book that I can remember, I enjoyed slowing down with the print version and like rereading sentences and paragraphs, and like you did with the Le Guin elegant prose. Like I was doing that with this book. So
nice.
You probably can't go wrong with any of the GGK historical fantasy books.
But see, I have a separate problem, which is that I would read his books and then feel inadequate. So that's right.
yeah. That's the bonus of me not having like writerly aspirations, is like I never have that problem. I can just fully appreciate, like, from the consumer, the entertainment consumer, the reader perspective.
Yeah.
Like I have no envy and jealousy. I just am in awe. I am in awe of writers. So I just, it's something that, you know, maybe if I tried and worked at it, I could maybe do, but I've never tried. So I know, like, right now I'm a beginner, and so I am in awe, and I don't have the ideas flowing like it, and so I just am in awe of people who have this creativity like you do, of these ideas that you're thinking over, that they're your own characters and world. Like I am in awe of that creativity, and I'm so thankful. I'm so thankful for it, that you know, there's people out there like you, because it's so, it brings so much joy and fulfillment to my life. And just, you know, I've settled down kind of a little bit with my wife here, and we're in the suburbs, and life can be pretty routine with my job, and like these fantasy books and historical fiction books, they're just so important for me to transport me on a daily basis. And I did some world traveling after I graduated college, and saw different parts of the world, and was a teacher in the Pacific and Vietnam as well, teaching English there, and just living abroad for 3 years. Like I gained such an appreciation for just, you know, living in other cultures, and meeting people that are very different from you, and learning new ways of viewing the world and of living. And so even though I'm living back close to where I grew up, and you know, in my home kind of milieu, it's these books that are helping me have this kind of rich life that is so important to me. So I'm just so thankful for you and people, authors like you, with all this creativity and all the agony you go through of putting the ideas down on paper. So I'm sure that is not easy.
It's like that quote. I don't remember who said it, but he who reads lives 1,000 lives. Or I'm sure you've heard that.
It might have been Martin. It might have been George R. R. Martin.
I feel like it might have been Martin. Yeah. But I mean, it's so fitting. And then there's the other quote. I think it was Ernest Hemingway, where he said, "To write is to sit at the typewriter and bleed." I think, which I was like, yeah, I feel you, bro. I feel you.
Oh man. Well, amen to that, and good thing that you're willing to push through all that bleeding into the typewriter. Oh man, I can only imagine. I really can only imagine. Like I've never tried, so like I've written academic papers, and even that can, you know, when I'm not trying to be, you know, interesting with characters and engaging, setting details, like even that could be a struggle to just, you know, get my analytical ideas down on paper. So man, I can only imagine with you know, dreaming up dialogue and dreaming up characters, just, you know, that didn't exist before. Man, that is a whole nother level of creativity that I am just in awe of. Mick Garfield's gonna be reading The Darkness That Comes Before this month. Nice. So Baker is an author I have not read yet. One of the many
Canadian
priority authors that I feel like I needed to have read already, but still have not gotten to for some reason. But there's too many. Just within like modern fantasy, let's say just within like the last 35 years, or like since the 90s into the 2000s, like even just looking at TradPub releases, it's not like there's not even that many TradPub houses that, you know, put out fantasy series or standalones, epic fantasy, or historical fantasy. Like there's not like that many, and I've only been reading mostly modern fantasy for like the past 5 years, and I feel like I've only scratched the surface. Like there's so much, and now there's the self-pub explosion, that you've joined, and where there's just hundreds and hundreds of people releasing books every year in our sphere. And so it's too much. I have the TBR mountain that I'm never going to climb, but man, I definitely want to get to Baker when I'm ready for a more heavy, kind of denser philosophical read. It's been a while since I've had a read like that, really since Malazan maybe. So want to give that a go. Have you read any of that of R. Scott Baker?
I haven't. I've heard it's very pessimistic.
Yeah. Yeah. Occasionally, that might be interesting to experience that side of things, but I tend to really like reading epic fantasy for the more heroic, uplifting side, which is why I think it was Brandon Sanderson, all these that got me into adult fantasy.
Ones, the leather-bound books.
Yeah, they are very pretty. He's what got me into fantasy as an adult. So I loved fantasy as a kid, reading Harry Potter. Like, I loved Harry Potter. I was a huge Harry Potter fan.
Huge Harry Potter fan.
For some reason, though, nobody told me to stop reading fantasy. But like, as I got older into like high school and then in college, like, fantasy just wasn't treated seriously, like, in the literature community. And so if you look up like the greatest books of all time, or what books you have to read before you die, or like, if you look up any of those lists, as I used to do as a kid growing up, and try to create a TBR for myself of like, ooh, okay, I want to be a serious reader, so I got to read, James Joyce and D.H. Lawrence and all the Jane Austen books. Like there's like the lit-fic English literature canon,
right?
And fantasy and sci-fi, besides a few outlier books, are like not part of that at all. And so I just kind of got away from it. And after Harry Potter, thought like, I guess I've graduated from like kids books and fantasy, and I was just reading literary fiction and nonfiction, and still a lot of really good books, but I was starting to read fewer and fewer books like every year, and I was just reading a couple books a year by the time my reading habit almost died out, until my friend, who never stopped reading fantasy, he'd read like Song of Ice and Fire and was a big Brandon Sanderson fan. He gave me Mistborn to read.
Nice.
And
that's the one. That's the one for everyone.
I fell in love. Like, I forgot what it was like to get so immersed in just another world and go on a roller coaster ride of a story, like kind of removed from our actual real world by some degree, which helped me, I think, just get outside of myself and go on an adventure that, could feel like heroic in a way that almost modern literary fiction cannot feel, because of the state of our world, or just the way it speaks to the modern mindset or the modern condition. Like, just you have to treat things like heroism more ironically, or with more ironic distance. But in a fantasy book like Mistborn, you can treat it unironically, and we can have real emotional journeys where heroes are going on this adventure together and trying to fight for what's right and against evil and save a world. And man, Mistborn was incredible. It was incredible and got me into fantasy, and I've been hooked ever since. And I've not picked up a single like new litfic book since I started reading fantasy. It's been fantasy, sci-fi, and historical fiction ever since 2018.
Yeah.
And I know you're a big Sanderson fan. Did you ever stop reading fantasy, or did you come back to it as an adult like I did?
I think it's the same story for me, man. I think this is like a really common story. It's like
people, bye, Mac. Thanks for stopping by.
Bye. People stop reading generally, or they stop reading fantasy throughout like their university years, and through that period of time, and then afterwards they come back, and it's almost always Mistborn, right? That's like the entry point that everyone seems to come back. And it was for me as well, because
you too, wow.
Yeah. And so what happened with me is like, this is several years ago now, but I started listening to audiobooks, because like I was finding it hard to find time to read, like a lot of people. Or I say that, but it's actually more like I just wasn't committing time to reading, right? But I wanted to like do something book related, and I had like these long drives I was doing. So I started listening to audiobooks, and then I started with um, uh, what's it called when someone writes a story about their life? I'm brain farting.
Memoirs, autobiographies.
Yeah, I started with memoirs, so I was listening to a bunch of those, and they're really good on audiobooks. But
yeah, for
sure. I was just like, this isn't like, so like before Mistborn, the thing that had really captured me was Song of Ice and Fire. Like before the show came out, I read Song of Ice and Fire, and I was like, whoa, like mind blown. Like it was so good. But then after that, I didn't read again because I think like growing up, I had this habit of just like, I have these books and these are my books. I'm just gonna keep reading them, right? Like like a dozen times or whatever. I read Song of Ice and Fire a couple of times, and then like I'm not gonna go out and find other books. Like those are my books. Right? and then
it's crazy how kids have that like mindset when there's so much out there to discover. Like you don't have to keep rereading, but we as kids like that doesn't occur to us for some reason.
Because they don't have buying power, man.
Yeah.
You know, that's another problem. Like you're just gonna read what's in your house, right?
Yeah.
And there was another series when I was young called the Animorphs. I don't know if you've read Animorphs.
I've never read it, but I remember those covers of showing like a human morphing into some kind of animal.
Yeah, and it was like 50 something books, and I read them all over and over and over. And it was like, but anyway, I came back to fantasy through Mistborn as well, and it was through the audiobooks, and that's how I sort of got back into this train. And like I'd written a book that was more lit fic as well, but it was never like published. It was just like my own personal project. I shared it with some friends, like whatever. It's a really bad book, but then I got back into like the fantasy things, and it took me about two years or so before I was like, I really have the writing itch, you know, and like I gotta write something.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Wow. So it was Song of Ice and Fire and Mistborn. Yeah, I watched the Game of Thrones show and enjoyed that. I don't know why it didn't spur me to read the books. Like I was just not in the mindset of reading fantasy for some reason. But thankfully Sanderson brought me in, and then it was just a massive try to race to catch up to figure out like, ooh, what's been popular in this like adult fantasy genre. Let me just try out what's really popular. And so I read through the Cosmere and loved it. Read First Law. Oh, where's my First Law? Up there, and loved it. Or listened, actually. I listened fully to First Law. Oh, nice.
Yeah, it's very dark. You can't see it. I can't do my finger. Yeah.
Faithful in the Fallen right here. Like that was a huge hit for me. I enjoyed Malazan, Wheel of Time, Red Rising. Like I was having really great experiences mostly with the popular stuff. Like some misses like Lightbringer or Poppy War Trilogy. I was also going a lot of what was like Daniel Green had been reading and talking up. But a lot of them were hits, and then the TBR just starts to explode when you start to find more reviewers and more booktubers that you find that are closer to you in taste and you align with, and you just find these less popular things that seem like, ooh, that looks good. Not a lot of people are talking about it, like Shadows of the Apt. I saw Alan was doing a read along of that. Riven Earth, exactly. Like not a lot of people talking about it yet. But it sounds good. And so like then the TBR just explodes, and there's too much. But that's a good problem. A good problem to have. We're just buried in amazing reads and spoiled for great reads and listens, because it's amazing. There are very few narrators that just don't work for me. Ooh, we got another author in the house, Mike Molman.
Hey, Mike, how's it going? Good.
Z, have you tried becoming a druid yet?
I have not, but I know that's one that
you're in for a treat. Okay, that could be one of my TBR picks for you, because the audiobook for this by James Meunier is Chef's Kiss.
Is it? Okay.
Great. And this is such a refreshing read too, because it feels almost like throwback quest fantasy a little bit, and in a way that I really haven't read anything like it before. And I also hadn't read any druid focused stories, and I love the magic in this, and everything was. I loved the action. I don't know how Mike did it, but he really immersed me in like a fantastical version of ancient Britain, his Britannia. That I want to thank Mike there for Very awesome. Oh, he did, like, he got inspiration from 80s quest fantasy. So
Nice.
that is an era of fantasy that I have not dived into. So it felt fresh for me and new, because I have not really done anything from the whole like 70s, 80s era of fantasy at all. But that's a big gap.
That's awesome.
In my fantasy.
Yeah.
But so here's a pick for you that's on the self pub side, and could use more hype for sure to get the word out.
And you're saying do that one on audio?
Oh yeah. Nice. The narration is perfect. Mike got someone, because of his dialect. It was like a very particular kind of like I think Southwest England kind of dialect based on where this book was like taking place, and it's not a common kind of accent that you hear among like audiobook narrators, and a lot of the audiobook narrators are British, but it felt distinctive. Like there was a little extra flavor to it. Oh, here Mike's coming
West
in
Country
the clutch.
dialect.
West Country dialect.
Cool.
So I think that's how we found the narrator was based on that kind of dialect, and
that's awesome
that he was bringing. But so yeah, I would highly recommend the audiobook there. Mike, nice to see you. James Meunier is from Bristol. I wasn't sure how to pronounce that name, but I heard him pronounce. So a lot of the narrators, they'll like say in the intro of the audiobook, like, Becoming a Druid by Mike Mullman, read by James Meunier. And so like I gotta hear how they pronounce their names because it's spelled I think that's like more like a French pronunciation, so it looks a lot different. Mm-hmm. But that was a great listen, and yeah, the audiobooks for the first 3 of them are out, which is a problem for me, because like I have the 4th book ready to go, but that's the problem with being an audiobook listener, is that like, man, I'm hesitant to read when if I know that there might be an audiobook eventually, or if I know that I love the narrator. Like I'm just gonna be trying to read this in James Meunier's voice. It's not gonna be the same. Yeah, so I'm holding off. I've not read this yet, but I am excited to get to it, Mike. I'm just sorry. I've been waiting. I know he's been writing some other sci-fi and prioritizing an audiobook for his new sci-fi book. Someday. Yeah, I might just have to go ahead and read it without that.
Nice.
There's an audio rec for you, but I want to ask you a little bit. Oh yeah,
I was going to say that's one of 3 picks, right?
Ooh, okay. I'll hold off on finalizing the 3 picks, but that's in the conversation.
I need.
God!
Whoa! Look at that.
He's saying I appeared in the news. Wow, that'll be a first for me, appearing in a book. Oh, I love it.
I hope it doesn't kill you right away, though.
Oh, that'd be okay. I'd love that. Any appearance. That's so nice of you, Mike. Thanks. Sorry, Z. What were you gonna say?
Oh, I was gonna say, pick 1 sight read and 2 audios for me, and then.
Interesting. Okay. I'll think about that. Maybe by the end of our chat today, I'll finalize a couple picks, or at least figure it out what's in contention. Speaking of figuring out what's in contention, I want to hear, because I'm not sure of everything you've read so far that I've read in kind of modern fantasy. And have you ventured into sci-fi at all?
Yeah. I like sci-fi. When I was younger, I read a lot of Peter F. Hamilton and Asimov. I read Hyperion. I've read like some of the classics, and then
yeah. I liked Hyperion. I didn't continue and read the last 2 books of that, but I liked the first 2.
Hey, is that Usman? It's good to see you, man.
Oh wait, that's Usman's here. Welcome, and he's in love with the cover of the new book. Hold on, I think I've never shared my screen on StreamYard before, so I hope I don't mess this up. Oh, he has it. Yeah,
I think there's a bit of water on it.
Let's see. No, I don't think I'm gonna attempt it, because I only have 1 screen here. But that's the new cover. It is an awesome cover, full of interesting movement and color, and man, it is so eye-catching. And I love I see the cover of book 2 on your website, and
don't share that. It's top secret.
oh, that's top secret. Okay.
Top secret.
Yeah. But it's in a similar style, but very different color scheme. So I love that they contrast. And
no, like the book personally, I like the book 2 cover more. I like book 2 generally, but yeah, I was just so happy with this. Like this is done by Andrew Malesky. He's a Russian artist, and I just got so lucky. Like I found him and I was like, this is the guy.
Yeah.
I want this guy. And then I was like,
oh no, the covers are rocking. They're rocking. They're gonna help get the word out on the book for sure and attract people to it.
I don't know if you saw it, but on Twitter I posted like my initial concept sketch that I sent to him.
Oh no, I didn't see it. No.
Oh my god, dude!
Oh, I did. Oh yeah, no, yeah, that's like what my art that I can do. Yeah. No, that was hilarious.
It was a masterpiece.
That was hilarious.
It was an absolute masterpiece. And so like he made small improvements to it. Like I basically had the end cover down from the get go, and then Andrew just came in, made some small improvements, and this is what we ended up with.
Oh, yeah, I love it. It's great. It's great. No, it looks amazing, and I can't wait to grab a copy for myself to show that off on my next book haul. Thinking about Usman, so he just listened to or read. I'm not sure if actually he listened or read. Probably listened, but he's been going through all the Dungeon Crawler Carl books. Have you tried that out yet yourself?
No. I've been hearing a lot of buzz about it.
But... Yeah, so I had never done this before in my life, but I finished all 6 books in like December and January, and I was like, I'm not ready to move on. I binged it, and I'm just like, I'm having such a fun time. I am just not ready to leave this story and these characters and this world building and the narrator Jeff Hayes was so immersive and so fun and amazing that I just went right back to book 1. Nice. And played the series on loop essentially. Nice. And that is the craziest reading kind of thing I've ever done. But have you ever done any? I had never done lit RPG before, and so that aspect of it was new and kind of fresh for me. And I liked the lit RPG. It was very light on the actual like lit RPG stats aspect. I think compared to what I've heard other lit RPG series can be like. But have you ever done anything like in that realm before?
I haven't. I've tried a few. For me, like I haven't found a lit RPG with like, I mean, I hate to say it this way, but like good prose. Like they tend to not be, because I think a lot of them are very serial, right? Like,
What's interesting is that with a book that I only listened to, so I did not have physical copies of the Dungeon Crawler card books. I did these audio only, and so normally I'm able to pay more attention on the prose if I am picking up the book, reading immersively or reading some of it in print. But I didn't pick that up, so I was so immersed in the story side that like I think the prose I don't even know what the prose was like. Like Jeff Hayes is such a crazy Jeff Hayes is such a crazy narrator. Like he was a full cast unto himself, and providing sound effects. And if you watch his like YouTube videos of him recording, like he does all these cool sound effects like that I thought might have been digital or done like after the fact. Like he'll do them just in the flow in his little sound booth. And he's amazing. He's a one-man band. And
I've heard,
the story is so immersive, like where it's definitely on the prose is on the more straightforward side, and it can get a little sarcastic, but the actual POV of Carl is very serious and emotional, and that gets contrasted by some other character voices, but we don't even get other POVs really. So there's an interesting balance between this very like serious emotional POV you're with, and then some crazy character stuff happening around him. It's a balance I loved, and so. Man, I don't even know if the prose, what the prose was like, or I don't think it was elegant. I don't think you'd call it elegant, but it got the job done for delivering the story. Right. And so that I think that's in contention. I don't have any pen or pencil here, but so one of the ones in contention for my 3 picks for you, if 2 of them are going to be listens, man, one of the greatest narrators I've ever heard, and one of my favorite series now, Dungeon Crawler Carl, has to be in contention. So I'll put Dungeon Crawler Carl's in contention. We have Becoming a Druid is in contention. Song for Our Bone, possibly. I mean, GGK is already on your radar, so I don't know if I want to recommend that. But let's see, what else? I want to see if you've read. You're thinking about starting Shadows of the Apt. You've already read Red Rising, First Law, Warlord Chronicles. Song of Ice and Fire, Realm of the Elderlings. You read all of, right?
Oh yeah, it's my second favorite series.
Oh, okay.
I could talk to you about
that. Yeah,
for a while.
You're all done with Realm of the Elderlings. Have you done? Let's see, Greenbone Saga.
I just finished Jade War, so that's an option.
Oh yeah,
go into Jade Legacy.
Okay, yeah, Jade War was my favorite, and
was it?
Yeah, I love Jade Legacy too. Okay, so you're already in the middle of there. What about have you done the Magician's Trilogy by Lev Grossman?
I have not. I know Murphy.
Okay,
that was a while back, right?
Yeah, that's one that is not terribly popular in like the booktube sphere now. So if you're a bit of a contrarian, that might be a positive for you, that it gets like divisive reactions. And it's more on the literary fantasy side. Like I've read a lot of modern fantasy now, and this one almost reads more like contemporary lit fic, but with a lot of fantastical elements to it. It's like portal fantasy, and but the author was like a kind of a lit fic author before he kind of switched, kind of like to writing fantasy, and it just reads more like very internal and less about kind of the external setting and plot events, although those play a role in it. But it's a very interesting read, and one of my favorite listens too. With Mark Bramhall just delivers a spectacular audio performance for that series, and one of my favorites. Very complex, emotionally nuanced kind of series and audio performance. So
that's a trilogy, or
that's a trilogy. That's trilogy.
Okay,
all done, and he's gonna release a new release soon. That is a King Arthur retelling this year. A new big series is coming out starting this year with him. It's been a while since he's come out with like adult epic fantasy, since the series was maybe like 10 years old, the Magician's Trilogy. So okay, that's definitely in contention. That one doesn't get a lot of, like, I don't know a lot of people that have read that and loved it, so that's appealing for me to recommend to you to kind of get someone else in on that. Then okay, that's an option. Have you done, let's see, The Expanse for some sci-fi? Have you tried that one?
I do want to read that one.
Ooh. Yeah, that one's also a treat for audio. The problem is I will have a hard time recommending something that's like does not involve the audio, but because all of these have amazing audios. Jefferson Maze is just so perfect for that. For standalones, have you done Project Hail Mary?
I have. It was brilliant.
Oh yeah. Audio. Oh, isn't Ray Porter like he was born to narrate that book?
No, it was really well done. And I think like there's like a little trick in that book that just comes across better on audio, right? Like avoiding all spoilers.
Totally.
I'm sure you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. So. Oh, absolutely.
Jazz hands.
That audio is one of the most gripping audios of my life, and even on re-listen was spectacular and amazing. Even though I knew all the twists and turns to come, it was amazing. Porter is so good at that kind of nerdy, like protagonist POV. He does it in the Bobaverse series as well.
I've heard of that one.
With that one would be fun for you because you like Porter from Project Hail Mary. Like he takes on a similar kind of persona, except that one he plays all these like similar but like clone characters, and so he puts like a different personality and voice into all the different ones, and so there's much more like vocal range in that performance than in Project Hail Mary.
Okay, interesting.
That one's still an ongoing series. I think Dennis Taylor is going to release book 5 in that this year. He did like the initial trilogy, and those are all short books, and it's basically like one story in 3 volumes, which a lot of people don't love, that like each volume doesn't stand on its own very well, and they don't have like real defined endings until the 3rd book. And I don't mind that. I like smaller books too, and feeling like you're making progress in a series. And but then the 4th book was much longer, and people complained that it was like too long, and I probably agree. It maybe got felt like it went on a little bit longer than it needed to, but it's doing something very interesting and fresh in that series. So it's another good one for audio. Oh wow, there's too many options. You got to find one for print. Like Song for Our Bones, a good one for print. with the audio, but maybe that's how I could get around this requirement. But let's see. Have you read any Adrian Tchaikovsky yet?
Oh, dude. I guess you can't see it. I have read a few. So Guns of the Dawn is one of my absolute favorites.
Oh, I have not read that one. Oh, dude, I gotta do that.
It is.
I gotta do that.
I impulsively picked it up near the end of last year, and it was just so good. It blew my mind. And also, I love the audio on that.
Yeah.
As well.
Oh, I can't wait. Can't wait.
Yeah. Highly recommend that. And I've read a few others. So I read Dogs of War. Barehead.
Yes.
I read Children of Time.
So good. The audios are so good for Dogs of War and Barehead.
Yeah. I think Children of Time I liked a bit more, and then I liked Ogres more than all of those.
Yes. Oh my god.
Ogres is brilliant. Yeah.
Are we clones? Like, did some cloning operation happen that I'm not aware of? Like, that's absurd. That those are your favorite Tchaikovsky books.
I mean, I haven't read most of them. I love Dogs of War.
I love Dogs of War. I like Barehead a lot. I love Children of Time just a little bit more though. And Ogres is one of the most spectacular stories I've ever read, and packs such a punch in like so less than 200 pages.
Yeah.
So much depth, brilliant. And just so suspenseful and so tense. I think I read that in one sitting because I could not put it down.
Yeah. Man, I mean, that was like, I think it was a day and a bit for me, but yeah, like it's one of those things where like that's how a novella should be written. Is it a novella? I don't know, but it's short, right?
Yeah. I think it's definitely in the novella range.
Yeah. And like Ogres and Piranesi to me are like the gold standards of novellas. So
yes. Piranesi, right with you. Spectacular, just jaw dropping. I was so immersed in the setting and the with the character. Like, I feel like when I'm having the best time with a book, it's when I am outside of myself. I am not Ben with, my beliefs, my viewpoints, like looking down at the events. I am seeing through the character's eyes. Like, I am there with them in the setting and thinking their thoughts and, and having their worries and fears and joys. And that was such an immersive read for me, where I was living in Piranesi's shoes. The journal style of that was just, it worked perfectly.
There. The thing is like, so this is one other caveat, which I should give you for your TBR picking, is that I am a bit of a prose snob, which kind of sucks. Like, it really sucks to be a prose snob. But like, if I don't gel with the prose, then like it's just really hard for me to enjoy a book. And like, the editor brain goes on. I'm like, why did they do it like that? Like, whatever.
Yeah. Oh my god. I think you. Yeah.
Sorry, I was gonna say, like, Piranesi is just so beautifully written. Like, it's so simple. Like, it's just elegant, simple, beautiful language.
Yeah.
There
wasn't a word out of place. And if you did the audio, did you do the audio with Chiwetel Ejiofor?
Yeah.
Oh my god, that's one of the best performances I've ever heard.
It's really well done.
Just amazing. And I did it immersively, mostly actually, reading in print and listening at the same time. And I was paying more attention to the prose maybe than usual. And there was not a word out of place that felt like it wasn't the right word. And it's the same way with one of your favorite authors, with Hobb, but she writes like longer books than Susanna Clark. Susanna Clark has Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell, so that's a long book. But Hobb is writing this huge, massive series with Realm of the Elderlings, and the prose itself, like she had to be writing pretty quickly to pound out all those books, in just like a year or two per book. Yeah. but like for the amount that she wrote in that span of time, like the elegance in the writing is
I mean,
really something to behold.
Yeah. For me, Hobb is like, her prose is the best kind of prose, and that it builds the world for you. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, the way the sentences are structured, they give you the atmosphere and the feeling of the world. And like, if you read Assassin's Apprentice, there's really not a great exploration of the realm of the Elderlings. Like, you can reach the end of the Farseer, you still like very subtle hints about what, like, how big the world is and how much you know about it. But at the same time, you feel so immersed in the world, feel so lived in, just because of the way her sentences are structured, with the more archaic use of language. It's like never excessively done, but it's just perfectly done, right? And like, she just has this Yeah, she just has this way of being really immersive with her prose, which I adore it.
Yeah, I can see you with the things that you've been loving. Like I could see that pro snob like with Hobb, with Clavel. Like I think there's an elegance, an understated elegance. Maybe they don't go. I wouldn't call them overly flowery. Like they're not using tons of really rare words that you might be unfamiliar with, but they're using common words just in elegant ways in the kind of flow of their sentences and what they choose to focus on. It just feels more elegant than the average prose writer, like someone like John Gwynne or Brandon Sanderson, where they're not attempting to have that same rhythm or elegance to it. The prose is more just their vehicle for the story, which is just a very different approach. But would you say like that like because of the prose style difference that you would prefer like a Hobb to a Gwynne or Sanderson because of the prose reason?
Oh yeah, like prose is a big reason for me. And like the funny thing is Abercrombie is my favorite author. And like he's not known for his prose. Everyone talks about how he's the best character writer ever. I actually think like Abercrombie is a great character writer. I think Hobb is a better character writer. I think Abercrombie has incredible prose. Like I think he's so underrated. It's just so punchy and like so powerful, and it's got full of so much character voice. And like I think like that's like my favorite thing in books is when like you have this really close narrative, right? Like you're really there with the characters, and Abercrombie does it better than anyone. And like he just like every sentence has like that character behind it. So like in my own writing, I tried so hard to be like Abercrombie in that sense. Like I tried to just really be there with the characters. And
you're getting me hyped. You're getting me hyped for your book. I love that too. I mean, we seem to be the same person in terms of like our reading brains. So like you're so right there that Abercrombie is not trying to be kind of rhythmically elegant in the same way that like Hobb or Clavel are trying to be, I think, but or Le Guin. Like she's creating like a different rhythm and like slowing the world down for you. Like in Wizard of Earthsea, I felt like my world was slowing down. I was entering like an alternate dimension, and she was transporting me kind of through the elegance of the writing. But like Abercrombie, you're right, it's more about punchiness and just clever word choice that brings out these individual unique character voices. And it's a different approach and like goal that he's having, but he does it so well. It's why people connect, I think, so much to the characters, because they 100%. Feel so lively and distinctive and just like jumping off the page, like real and organic.
And it's one of those things where like, sorry to interrupt, but like everyone talks about how good Stephen Pacey is as a narrator, right? And absolutely top tier, best narrator ever. But like Stephen Pacey couldn't narrate like that if it wasn't written the way Abercrombie wrote it. Right? Like this is like a match made in heaven kind of situation.
No, I have not tried to listen to another Stephen Pacey book, but it's because I'm more fearful that it won't be the same. Like I've listened to a bunch of the Audible samples of other books he's narrated, and it does not have the same.
It doesn't have the same.
No, it doesn't. You're right. It is the marriage of narrator and writer, and
like Abercrombie's prose is very specifically written to be read, like to be read aloud, I think, or at least that's how I feel. Like it flows really well in verbal speech. I don't know.
Now I'm even more happy that you went and read Empire of Salt, because this is the closest thing I've come, I think, in modern fantasy to writing that feels similar to Abercrombie's style, with the punchiness and the character voice, those really like unique kind of character voices that just jump off the page. Like I got that so much with these Con Iggulden books. That was it. Like from the very beginning, like these characters are so distinctive and real. And man,
Vic Deeds.
Vic Deeds. It's hilarious that you called Vic Deeds your spirit animal, by the way. Like he is such a funny like misfit character. Like
I love him.
Man, I feel like Iggulden and Abercrombie likely have similar inspirations, and I'm betting, I know in Abercrombie's case that this is true, but I'm betting it's true because Iggulden is a historical fiction writer mostly, and so he's almost certainly read Cornwell. But I think Cornwell is a major influence for Abercrombie. Well, we know he is because Abercrombie's talked about loving Cornwell, and and Eagledon. I think he's like the huge influence of Eagledon, because like you see, like, I don't know if you've read the Sharp books, but
not yet.
That same punchiness and character voice is there in the Sharp books, and it's there in the Warlord Chronicles, but in a more elevated, elegant prose style. In the Warlord Chronicles, like that feels like like he put more care and effort into the language choices and into making it older feeling. Whereas Sharp is taking place in 1980. Oh my god, not 1980. In the year 1800. The year like the first Sharp book is 1799. I don't know where 1980 came from, but then like most of the books are kind of like around early 1800s, 1810, like around that time. And it's closer to our modern day, and so like the language feels like more accessible and more modern, but still like immersive for the year 1800. He is just so great at immersing you like in a older time period and not using a lot of more modern isms that take me out of my immersion. Like, so R.F. Kuang and the Poppy War, like these books are set kind of in like an Opium War setting of China. I don't remember when the Opium War was. It's like also around like 1800-ish, like or further back. I don't remember. But sure. Like not our modern world.
Yeah.
But she used many more like kind of modern word choices and characters kind of cursing in a way that felt very modern and like just did not immerse me. I kept on noticing prose choices, and I am not a prose snob, but I kept on noticing prose choices in the Poppy War trilogy that were bothering me or taking me out of my immersion. I noticed it in Richard Swan's trilogy too, with the Justice of Kings books, but especially in book 2.
Interesting.
And I noticed it in the first binding, where like and Brian Staveley books as well, with the Chronicle of the Unhewn Throne. I am rarely noticed prose, but in all of these cases, prose choices were bothering me and taking me out of the story and my immersion, and were really getting in the way. And so like even ones like Gwyn or Sanderson, who are more workmanlike prose, like they're rarely doing anything that's taking me out of my immersion or a word choice that's bothering me. So I am with you in caring about the prose, but and for whatever reason, just some styles are continuing taking me out. Like Staveley does a lot of metaphors and similes that don't feel like organic to the character that's thinking them. Like they're like the character in certain moments just would not be making these like really abstract, weird comparisons in their mind.
Right.
It's more like Staveley, the like he used to be like an English teacher. It's more like Staveley, the poetry reader and English teacher and like lover of language and metaphors, is like inserting all these things, but they're not true to the character perspective that he's in.
Yeah. And
it's just taking me out. But the masters like Abercrombie or Hobb, they're so deep in that character's perspective that they're not making choices that are seeming like they're inorganic to the character, but more just like the author's flourish. So with you having similar priorities, I think there's a great chance I might really gel with your book. So that's getting me really excited for Riven Earth.
And I mean, Hobb is such an interesting case study there, because like her Fitz books, if you paid attention to prose, are written very differently from her like Live Ship Traders and the Rainwild Chronicles. And like personally, I like the Fitz books better. I think that Hobb there's a certain degree of subtext when she writes with Fitz's voice. I feel like she just knows Fitz really well.
Right.
And like there's maybe it's because she's writing in first person, or maybe it's because like she knows Fitz really well. But there's that same degree of subtext I think is missing from the third person books, which are still amazing. Don't get me wrong. Like I love those books. But yeah, it's really interesting to see like when an author is like writing a book, and if they choose to go for a close narrative style and like the different voices they can put on for different characters. Like obviously Shogun is omniscient, so it's like a different experience to that as well.
No, I feel you on that. With I haven't thought of the Realm of the Otherlings books like that, but you're right. There's Hobbs like inhabiting of Fitz for so many years, probably of her own life and of writing from that perspective. I feel like it's the same thing you get with Rakio and the Sun Eater books. Just all the novels are all from Hadrian's retrospective perspective, and I feel like he just has been living inside this single character for so many years, and that you're right. There's all this subtext and added added layers and meaning that they can do because of how deeply they understand that character and how long they've spent with them and thought through their whole journey. And I think you're onto something there, which has me convinced that you are gonna love Sun Eater. Like there's not even a chance that you're gonna. I don't want to give that to you because the last book is not ready yet. So like there's no rush, and I don't. That would be a good one to do just in print because the prose is rich and Rakio puts a lot of care into the prose, but the audio is so good. And with a first person perspective, audio just works so well. So man, I would not do Sun Eater print only. If you need a print book, man, would that be? Have you done Malazan?
I haven't. I've been scared of that one.
Oh, that one. I think Malazan is a series that could be for you. It was a little uneven for me. It's not one of my like favorites of all time because of the unevenness for me. Where is it? Like I liked Gardens of the Moon. It was really fascinating and interesting and faster paced than I thought it would be, and just some cool stuff went down. It's a little hard to follow, like because he doesn't give you all the context and background, but not nearly as difficult to read as I had thought it would be. So that was a pleasant surprise. And then this next couple were like really hard hitting, emotionally intense reads. And House of Chains kind of like slowed things down and it was also really intense. Midnight Tides, like, man, these were so emotionally heavy in here. But we reached book 6 in the Bone Hunters, and this was like just the perfect Malazan read, just epic, just really amazing thematic work, and the plotting just came together in a way that just was the perfect kind of epic fantasy read for me. But unfortunately, after that, it was kind of downhill. Like I didn't love Reaper's Gale as much, and then Tola Hounds just really didn't work for me. And then interestingly, Dust of Dreams is many people's like least favorite. I kind of loved Dust of Dreams before, like the ending just didn't land fully with Crippled God. Like that hurts my ability to just like gush about Malazan overall. That I didn't love the ending. Most people though, who like the series, they love the ending. So
I feel like the Crippled God is most people's favorites from what I've seen.
So that maybe is just a me issue. It's such a huge investment that I don't know that I want to like give you Gardens of the Moon, because then it's like, this might be months of your reading life that I'm sending you down this giant rabbit hole that I'm not sure that you would end up being thankful for, that you would love. But I think you definitely should give it a try at some point, because Erickson comes from like a very like heavy like litfic poetry kind of background. Like he pays a lot of attention to the language choices and the flow of sentences, and so he pays a lot of attention to the prose and is very thoughtful in how he put everything together. And so it's I think there's a lot there that you would love. I'd have no clue if you'd end up like falling in complete love with it or not, but it's definitely at some point a must read for you. But I Gardens of the Moon itself is one of the weaker ones easily, so like it's tough to make that like one of my core recommendations. See, the nice thing is like some of these book ones I think are like they hit right off the bat, like The Magicians, that first book, like Becoming a Druid, that first book, even the first book of Dungeon Crawler Carl. Like Dungeon Crawler Carl is an interesting series because like I think it really does, like I don't think Dinneman really figured it out how to make it really impactful until like book 4, maybe. Like the first 3 books, I think he was really finding his way with the series. But like, so books 5 and 6 especially just like really level up in some ways and like got really special, like took it to a special place.
Nice.
Where but like books 2 and 3 were just kind of okay for me. So it's weird. It's like I really recommend the series, but with the caveat of like, but you might take a while for it to feel like it's getting amazing. But the narration is so good that even when the books are not amazing in every way, like they're so fun to listen to, at least because of Jeff Hayes. But that first book is just like, it starts so quickly, and I the first book is solid there. So that one I'm really thinking about recommending for you for the audio. The problem is the print pick. Have you read Song of Achilles?
I have not. Is that
that's
a romance or
no? Well, it's like ancient Greek historical mythic kind of fiction, telling like from Patroclus's perspective. I don't know if you've read the Iliad, but are familiar with the story. But like Patroclus was Achilles' kind of like best friend and companion, maybe lover, probably lover, and a great warrior, on his own. And Madeline Miller just like goes back to when Patroclus was a kid in Greece and like tells like his kind of life story, but and like really emotionally poignant, and so like there ends up being a romantic element to it, which I found very engaging, but that's not like the whole thing at all. There's so much more going on besides that, and I don't even think of the romance element as when I really think back on the book. I think more of it just as like this journey of Patroclus himself as kind of a singular character. But that's one where the prose was so elegant, like all the things we've been talking about with loving in prose, like a Le Guin kind of style where it feels elegant yet simple and understated and wise. Oh man, okay. Well, again, the problem there is that like the audio is amazing for that one too by Fraser Douglas, but like I think you could love the print of that though, because the prose is really nice. So
some contention.
I think that one is definitely. I mean, I don't think I can come up with a better one to read in print. But if you end up doing that in audio, you wouldn't be going wrong. Man, okay, Song of Achilles has to be. It's one of my favorite reads of recent years. And then I think I have the picks because I can't go Malazan or Sun Eater. You already have Shadows of the Apt kind of on deck, so I think I know what I'm gonna go with. All right, we're going with for your my picks for your TBR, and no rush to get into these, but I think Song of Achilles is definitely very popular in recent years. It had a kind of book talk surge a couple years ago, but I think we've crested that wave, and it's no longer like, very talked about like everywhere. Like it's kind of had its big moment. So I don't think you would be like just hitching to the bandwagon at this point. Like you're getting to the party late on the Song of Achilles train. Nice. So
I love that.
So like you're not part of the wave right now. Song of Achilles for print, because that one, the prose is I think right up your alley. And then for audio, The Magicians by Lev Grossman. Man, Mark Bramhall is such a unique narrator, so nuanced, like has an interesting voice. Oh, that's such an interesting book too. I would love to be able to chat about that with someone. And then, man, could go the Expanse route. That is a big series though to give you. Would you prefer for another pick? Do you think sci-fi or more his like quest fantasy, like becoming a druid? Which one of those feels just like more like what you're interested in reading now?
So I mean, the thing is, I will read The Expanse.
Yeah. Right? Yeah, if that's like, on the priority TBR, then I'll throw Becoming a Druid at you, and that one for audio.
Yeah, and Mike showed up to the chat, so I gotta give his book some props, right?
Yeah. He's also like, he's great. He loves sending the actual like hardcovers to people. It might be actually probably much harder to do to Canada, so I don't want to mention that. And
that's okay.
Yeah. Sending books within the U.S. is very cheap, but
cross borders it gets pricey.
But he was so nice when he saw I was interested. I actually had my own copy of Becoming a Druid, but then he sent me one, and he sent me one with the other set, and they have this like really cool. So there's this naked hardback, which is really cool. That I like that. But then in the version he sent me, there's a transparency of the painting.
Ooh, wow!
That's kind of overlaid on the title page.
It's beautiful.
That's like such a cool little touch.
Yeah.
Nice. And I could take that out, but like that is such a cool little thing that he included there.
You can take it off too. That's beautiful.
I love.
All right,
I love that.
We got it, man. TBR set, Song of Achilles, The Magicians, and Becoming a Druid. And if I don't like all of these, Ben, we're not friends.
Yeah, there's a lot of pressure. No. But I will say, if one of those does not hit, or if all at least this one hit.
Oh yeah.
So I was so happy when I saw, like, first of all, I had never heard anyone ever talk about Empire of Salt before Kyle asked me to buddy read it with him. I'm like, what is this? Like, is this a modern fantasy series? Like, what is this? And it's a complete trilogy by Con Eagledon, but he normally publishes historical fiction. So his publisher probably requested that he use a pseudonym, or maybe he chose it, but I just don't think many people know that these exist.
It's not a major mystery though, like CF Eagledon. Who else would it be?
Yeah. Oh wow. Usman said Mike sent the books.
I didn't know you're in Canada, man.
Well, if you end up liking Becoming a Druid, I mean, you can, if you let Mike know with a review, he'll probably be eager to send them to you.
Oh no, I couldn't ask him for that.
But big props to Mike for that. But this series came out of nowhere and blew me away. These were so much fun. Like, they felt so unpredictable.
They were so goofy.
And they were goofy. Yeah, but goofy and serious though. I love that kind of balance. Like that's why I was talking about that balance in Dungeon Crawler Carl. There's a goofiness, yet there's high stakes, and there are serious events and things happening to the characters, and you care about the characters while there's still a lightheartedness at the same time. And these books had that interesting tonal mix, and the narrator too. Man, I can't remember the narrator's name, but he was so good. He was so good with these.
Damien something. Yeah, he was really good.
Oh man, poor show for me not remembering the narrator's name, but the audiobooks were incredible. But I thought that things started to get elevated a little bit in Shang, because we expand into a different setting. We're only in the city of Darien in book one. Mm-hmm. And then I kind of like that he gave us so little world building. It was so easy to get into to access the story, because there's not a lot of world building details to get a handle on. He said it in some alternate version of Earth, so it's kind of familiar but different, and he only gives you one city to get to know. And then
there's some mountains, and on the other side
a
different city.
There's just another city. There's just another city state to the east somewhere. And it's okay, this is his version of ancient China and Japan combined or something. And I loved the sword warrior perspectives we got from
Hondo,
Shang.
And then
Hondo, and the perspective we start with, where things start to get into Frankenstein territory. We go into a purgatory situation, which I think he did in a more interesting way than actually Steven Erikson did in Malazan, where we're in this purgatory where there's this endless battle going on. That was so thematically rich and emotionally poignant, I thought, for that character that was there. But I love that we quickly kind of journey back to Darien, to where these worlds can collide, and the theming of these cultures kind of meeting, of characters from different places and cultures kind of coming to learn and respect each other. That was such a heartwarming theme. At the same time that there was some really badass and cool antagonists and action scenes, and gritty action too.
I mean,
I love when authors don't hold back on the brutality and violence and in war and battle, and it rings true. And
I thought what I really liked about this series was that it was intimate. Like you said, he didn't like have a sprawling world. This is not like a Song of Ice and Fire where you have all the Westeros or anything. Like, he kept the world small, and some people will say, "Oh, doesn't feel lived in or anything." But I think like the focus is on the story, the focus is on the characters, and it's just like so creatively fun. Like he just like the magic system in this book. It was so like weird and awesome and hilarious, and like
kind of random, but like it still made sense. Like all these magical artifacts that felt like they're like a relic from an earlier time where magic was more common, and now the people just like don't fully understand it. But they make use of these artifacts that have survived, and like when we slowly across the 3 books like get to see different artifacts and what they do, and like they were always so interesting and weird and unique and like powerful in their own way, and like each character also had different magical abilities, and they used them in unique ways that felt important to the story as well. Like even Vic Deeds and his skill at being a gunslinger, like he introduced like these gunslinger Western elements in, and it all just kind of worked. It felt like a big genre mashup of different things.
And you had some like really great character growth too, especially with Tellius. Tellius, that was his name, right?
Yeah.
Like he was so different between book 1 and 3, and I think like for me personally, I felt like book 2 was like kind of the peak of the series. It was like where the stakes were the highest, and it was just like it was really intense. Like the ending of book 2, I was like, oh man, anything could happen there. The series is so random. But then book 3 might have had my favorite scene, which was I don't know, it was like nighttime and there's an enemy camp. I don't know if you know the scene I'm talking about.
Nighttime raid. The nighttime raid, that was amazing.
Oh my god, it was so good.
Oh, the action was so tense and suspenseful, and like you said, you thought anything could happen in this series. Everything felt like unpredictable, and one of the cool things about the character writing is that all of the characters, from like the main characters and the POVs to even side characters, they ended up being more rounded and complex and nuanced than like I would have first expected. Like I expected certain characters to be more like fall into cliche tropes, but all these characters in here surprised me with their depth and their humanity and their nuance, their ability to actually think in complex ways. It's one of the reasons I'm having a little bit of a tough time with the Dandelion Dynasty. It's because a lot of the characters feel like an almost exaggerated persona, and that they're not that rounded and complex and nuanced and do surprising or unpredictable things or change in unpredictable but still organic ways. And like this series just did that time and time again, where like we first meet Tellius, and he's like this grumpy older middle-aged guy who's leading this orphanage of boys. Like you think he's just going to be this miserable kind of like evil, corrupt person who's profiting off these boys. And he ends up being this like caring mentor figure who is really trying to take care of the boys. And
I mean, he ends up way higher than that too, but like no spoilers. But it was really impressive, and it was just I loved how it was just tight, like tightly plotted. Everything felt natural. Everything fit into place, even though it was really goofy and random at times. Like especially I think of Nancy. Everything that happened to her, I was like, "What? this girl is wild." And then
but you're right. Really, like a lot happens, and not a lot of pages actually. Like each book really just impressive. Between like 300 to 400 pages. For epic fantasy, like these are on the shorter side, and the series is just like overall on the shorter side in terms of total word count, I think, or hours in audiobook. But like it tells this big sweeping story, but very tight, like you said. Like but yet I like reads that aren't tight. Like I love varieties. Like I love being able to go from this kind of tight series to like a standalone like Shogun, where single scenes can take like more than an hour to listen to. And so like the variety in our reads is great too. Like just the variety within like fantasy and historical fiction is so great. Like I love being able to bounce between different styles, like a slower Hobb, or then to read some Sanderson, and to have these punchier stories. So I love the variety in just the fantasy genre alone. If we look at that,
and I think it's getting it's just getting broader, right? Like we're seeing more and more variety, especially with self-pub, and that's awesome. I love it.
There's the variety is almost too much to handle though. Like I looked at Spiffbo from afar, and I'm like, wow, there's 300 books in here, and even just the semi-finalists, finalists, like there's so many different authors and series and subgenres. But I want to give it. I like mixing things up. Like I've read Travis Baldrey's 2 books, and like got a sense of cozy fantasy. And it's like, ooh, I want more cozy fantasy in my life. Like I want to like some of the Spiffbo finalists, like Hills of Heather and Bone. I want to give something like that a try because I don't read too many kind of more like cozier kind of books like that. But with self-pub, you get every possible flavor you can find. What would you say yours is? Your books, Riven Earth, is it closer to the gritty, grimdark side than the cozy side of things, or somewhere in the middle?
Yeah, I would not call it cozy. So it is I think closer to the gritty side. I did not know if I would have called it grimdark when I was writing. I don't know what that word really means. But it seems like most reviewers are calling it grimdark. So I guess,
interesting. Yeah, the word is an interesting one because it's associated with Lord Grimdark, Joe Abercrombie, who's when I read or listen to his books, I'm having one of the most fun times of my life.
Exactly.
So if reading Grimdark can be so fun, like that word doesn't seem to exactly fit. I think
to me it's like I guess the cynicism of the characters. That's how I kind of self-define it. Is like if your characters are not really heroic at all, like I mean Abercrombie's books, everyone's kind of just out for themselves. They're just trying to survive in this this horrible world, and like funny things happen to them, but they're also horrible things, and like he just has like a wit which makes it enjoyable.
Would you say that you're going for a similar kind of tone underneath of closer to the cynicism side than the Sanderson like optimistic, hopeful bent?
Yeah, so I think in that sense I'm closer to Sanderson actually, because I think I'm like a pretty naturally optimistic person. Like I like to believe that most people are good and they're trying to be good most of the time. But then like there's obviously a billion shades to that, so I try to like incorporate that as well. What I will say is like I don't think my first book is that dark, but I think book 2 is quite dark. Book 2.
Interesting. So it sounds like you're describing some kind of middle ground in the tonal style and like the underlying ethos that is not the cynicism of Abercrombie, nor like the more like less gritty but optimistic Sanderson side. So like sounds like something more like John Gwynne, but possibly Bernard Cornwell, like in the Warlord Chronicles, where it's like there's this underlying goodness and heart, yet a kind of gritty realism and pragmatism at the same time, kind of as counterbalancing forces, maybe.
Yeah, I think that's accurate, and I think it's like characters who are pretty broken, but like trying to do their best is the way that I see it. Like these are people who really do try, right? But sometimes they just suck and they can't get it done. But like they live with the guilt, right? And they live with the regrets, and they grow and they change and they try a bit harder. So
man, you're really selling this too well. Like I want to pick it up now. But like
do it.
with you, Usman's asking, is it available in print?
It is, yeah. Just it's on Amazon.
It just came out. Was it yesterday? Was it
on Tuesday?
Tuesday, 2 days ago. Oh yeah, it is available, Usman. I gotta pick myself up a copy because it sounds like that is up both of our Adleys.
You may not have seen it there, Usman. I was holding it up earlier.
Oh, there it is, right there. That the way you're describing it, it sounds like you are. Wait, maybe in your writing, I'm curious. Are you most focused in on the character side of things? Like, is that where you're putting most of your thinking and effort? Like, is that what you're most hoping comes across as the character side. Like
Yeah.
I know some authors like throw themselves fully into the setting and world building side,
Right.
and that's like really important. Or like, or you know, they're big plot outliners, and that's a huge thing that they focus on. Or are you kind of were you kind of focusing on all of those things, or one of those more than anything else?
So like for me, I mean, I don't like it when people say like I'm character focused something, because I think it really does have to be all integrated. But I'm a character focused reader. And like as a writer, that's kind of how I built the story. Is it was all the whole thing was built around character arcs, and like I had this vision. So there's a okay. I'm gonna go on a bit of a tangent here, but there's this historical figure called Ashoka the Great. So he used to be a king in the Mauryan Empire, which is like in India back maybe like 100 years after Alexander the Great, maybe less than 100 years after him. And the story with Ashoka is like he ascended to power, he did some conquering, and he conquered this other empire. And he was like, it was like the degree of bloodshed like that was involved there, like 100,000 people died or something. And he was just like so shocked himself personally. Right? This is like stories, right? Like this is so long ago that we don't know what actually happened, but this is the story that's told about him. All right. And like I found the story really interesting, where like he was just so taken aback by what he'd done by conquering these people that like for the rest of his life he regretted it. He converted to Buddhism, and he's the king that spread Buddhism across like the Southeast Asia, and he became like a peaceful guy. Right. So there's like a lot of
I know very little about kind of Indian history, and so this is so fascinating. Like the idea of someone in a position of high authority and power being reflective and like trying to change, like that does not feel like it happens very often. Ever.
Yeah. So then like that was like the seed where when I was like reading about this guy, I was like, such an interesting historical figure. And then I had this seed in my head of like this king who he just has these great regrets of like he messed up deeply, and it's like affected him deeply, and he has like crippling anxiety from what he's done in the past, and like he can't bring himself to like step up to the mantle that his people need him to be at. So there's a lot of mental health themes in the book, and like the entire story revolved around like this king's journey into like finding like his place on the throne, as it were, finding his way to become king, really. And then somehow like I had this like thought about this king, and then other characters started popping in. I was like, okay, who's like running the kingdom, right? In his place. And then this other character, and she's like very central to the story. And then, you know, like who's like the mischievous, conniving guy in the kingdom. And so like I just started coming up with these other characters, and then I had like all their character arcs plotted, and I didn't have a world yet, which I think is like really backwards. Like most people will build like a world and then like throw the characters in there. But I was like, I need to build a world for these guys to live in.
Wow, like that's so interesting. Yeah.
And that'll like challenge them in a way that they can grow in like the direction I want to show them. And then from there, like the themes started to come into place. Like I'm a bit of an environmentalist, so there's like huge environmental like man versus nature themes, and like the way like man doesn't really know what he's doing when it comes to anything with nature, and then the consequences of that, and when they come biting back. And then so like I basically just built it around the characters. Like even I don't know if you know this, but there's internal art in these books. I'm gonna try to find some there really quickly. So like this is like on the opening page. These are dryads.
Oh, I love internal art. Oh wow, there's more sketches throughout.
Yeah. I think there's 6 of them inside. But like essentially like it's all like very naturey, very greenish, and like I built the world in that way, partially for that thematic reason, where it was like this is the main theme I want to explore, but then it was also partially character based, where the entire idea like came to me because I have one character who's like a really old, terminally ill soldier, and this guy's like on his deathbed, but he finds new reasons to live, right? Like essentially. So I won't say any more than that. And I needed a way for this guy to get around the kingdom. And so I was thinking like usually you would have a horse, but a horse is hard to climb onto, and this guy's like really sick. So I created these creatures which are like horses, but they're covered in vines, and the vines will like grow out. They'll grab him and like pull him back to their top. And that was like the conception of the whole world. It was like, I'm like, okay, yeah, like start with the character, and then I built it out from there.
Oh, I love it. That is so fascinating, man. You're selling me on it even more, because I'm also just a huge kind of hippie environmentalist. Yeah, I just think it's such a shame how we're treating like our only planet that we have, and there's some damage that we're doing that is probably not able to be fixed in any of our lifetimes. And
yeah, I mean, I try not to be heavy-handed about it or anything like that, but I think like of a broad, like the broadest theme is probably environmentalism, and then there's smaller themes of like othering and racism and a lot of mental health things as well in there. Like I really tried to explore the characters as deeply as I could, and like because like they kind of became my friends, and so I wanted to give them justice,
Oh wow! Have you? I can't even think of other fantasy reads that have an environmental. I'm sure I'm just forgetting or haven't thought too much about it. But have you seen any of like an environmentalist theme come across in anything you've read in recent years, or as used as an inspiration, or just seen that reflected in something else? Like nothing comes to mind immediately as kind of that I've read, at least. I know Le Guin has I know some books that I know are supposed to have kind of theming around that I haven't gotten to yet.
Yeah, I feel like it's on like a dying earth genre kind of thing. Like I think there are definitely books like that. I feel like maybe some Sanderson books go into there. For some reason, I keep thinking of High Storms right now, but like it's not exactly the same. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I just in the series and books that I feel like I've been reading in the past bunch of years, like they just haven't had that kind of theming as far as like I can think of. So that will feel fresh to me. That'll feel really, really nice, I think, as a kind of different kind of thematic focus than what I've really been seeing in recent years. Yeah, like I'm looking through all the books I've been reading, and it's like, okay, the Broken Earth trilogy, a little bit, or a lot of that was involved in the theming, but that was not terribly much about that. Let's see. Yeah, there haven't been too many that have had that kind of environmental theme around it. So that'll be really cool for me, I think. That gets me more excited. And man, the more you talk about your book, the more I'm inspired to pick it up.
Yes, I'm doing it right.
I can't wait. Man, I was just thinking of other possible authors that could appeal to you for depth, but also being fun and just clever prose. Like KJ Parker. Have you read any?
I have. I read How to 16 Ways to Defend the Walled City.
I did that one, and the novella Purple and Black, which I thought was tighter and just like hit a little harder.
Yeah, I did like it. I enjoyed it quite a bit. But before we do anything else, I want to talk to you about Fool's Assassin.
Oh, Fool's Assassin. We'll have to be careful for spoilers, because we don't want to.
Because you haven't started Fool's Quest yet, right?
Not yet. Yeah, my buddy Reed, partner in crime, Colin, has been busy with reading House of Chains, which is a tough one, and he's been starting classes for the summer. Then, so I've been waiting to do it, because we've been buddy reading all of these books together. But I can't wait. I can't wait to get to Fool's Quest. It's coming. Maybe next month, I think, is the time. For it. But, oh my God, Fool's Assassin was so good. It was like, man, all these series resets she's done with Fool's Errand and Fool's Assassin, they were so emotionally poignant, with seeing Fitz like at this newer, older point in life, kind of catching up with where he's been, and then getting into this crazily new dramatic kind of situation. Like these book ones between Fool's Errand and Fool's Assassin have been incredible, just amazing. What were you wanting What are you running to get into with Fool's Assassin?
You know what? I honestly just wanted to talk Realm of the Elderlings as a whole. So like,
Yeah.
I watched your talk with Derry. I think it was you and Colin and Derry, and you guys were talking about Fool's Assassin. And I was like, oh, I love this book. Yeah, because I thought Fool's Assassin was just brilliant, man. It was like one of my favorites. I think for me in the series, like if I'm thinking of the books in order, like Royal Assassin, Fool's Errand, Fool's Fate, and Fool's Assassin are the best ones, in my opinion.
Oh yeah, Royal Assassin in that first trilogy, it does stand out. Like with the way it ends, it hits so hard at the end.
Oh my god!
I can't wait to reread that. I can't wait to reread that.
Yeah.
Like I have the illustrated edition to reread, and like I just remember, I've read it a lot of years ago now, but that ending really stands out. And just like this is where like just so much is going down, and Fitz is kind of coming of age in a really tough environment, and
it's crazy how much like the events of the second book affect him for the rest of the series, like right up until the 16th, until the final book of the series. Like it's has a huge impact on him.
Yeah, it's amazing. Oh man, if you haven't read Royal Assassin, look away, but like this is toward the end of the book. Toward the end of the book.
I'm gonna cry right here.
Can you see that?
Yeah, I can see that.
Oh my god. Oh man, that was Burrich right there.
Yeah,
holding Fitz. Man, like the great thing about long series, and I know I like shorter tight series are amazing for telling stories in a tighter way, and I love that, but long series do something that you just can't do in the shorter series, which is the time that you spend with the characters, like and the living you do alongside them, and the growth that you go on, the journey that you go on, just the time that you spend with them, it brings you closer to them in a way that you just like can't match. Like I loved reading Empire of Salt, and they were so engaging. Like, you know, none of these characters are going to stick with me like Fitz is kind of living inside of me so dearly, because like that's something that only these long series can do. With like you know, Stormlight and Sun Eater and Realm of the Elderlings. Like I love long series. Like even Malazan has some kind of characters that you know appear throughout and that you are through lines, and Faithful and the Fallen, another great like 4-book series. But you know, like the time I spent with those characters on that journey was amazing.
Running and fighting.
First Law, seeing like I love seeing and the fight, the intergenerational like First Law, the intergenerational aspect of like the first trilogy and then the second trilogy. Like you can only do that in these long series, and like what Hobb does with her long series is like age fits into these different periods of life. And man, like I liked Farseer, but I was like in my 20s reading about, you know, young Fitz. And then it didn't hit as hard as when I read about like 35-year-old Fitz when I was like the same age. Like when I read Tawny Man like this past year, and I was like the same age as Fitz, and he's like, Hobb wrote it in a way that felt so real to me, as like, man, this is exactly what being in your like mid-30s is like, where like you feel like you've, you know, lived a lot already, but like that you know, still like a lot of your life is ahead of you, and you're trying to figure things out with where things are gonna go. And man, it hits so hard. Like aging alongside Fitz like that, man.
I think like Hobb does such a great job of making her characters realistic, and that's one of those things where like people think they want realistic characters and usually they don't. I think I think if people have something that's too real, it tends to turn them off. Like you want some redeeming features, or like you know, you want some degree of charisma to your characters. Right. Like I don't personally think Abercrombie's characters are realistic at all.
Yeah, they're exaggerated. They're exaggerated.
They're caricatures, but they're amazing because they're so like charismatic, and like you're just like with them, right? And Fitz is like a very controversial character for that same reason, because I think he is very realistic, and it's like it's so subtle, and there's so many contradictions to his character. You know, the way he treats people is like completely different in like different times, and it's like people are like, this is so inconsistent, but it's like, yeah, because people are inconsistent, you know. And Hobb
exactly.
Hobb has a way of just capturing like the essence of life, like the beauty of it, and like she understands, I think, that like for most people, like life revolves around our relationships, and I think like that's what we see in Realm of the Elderlings is like we grow with Fitz, and we like make these same bonds that he has, and like the way they're tested over time and the way they change, and like the struggles that come across is like really the heart of the story. And there are like moments like in Golden Fool, I just remember near the end of that book, he receives a letter, and I won't say any more than that. Like he sees like a letter that was sent before by Patience. I don't know if you know that. And I was just like bawling my eyes out.
Wow.
Like, I don't know if you remember that letter, but it just hit me so hard.
I think so. Yeah. No, the stuff that Hobb throws in that's kind of just like thrown in kind of offhand, like that's minor, that like that can pack a punch, like in the right moment, delivered the right way. Like, yeah, you're right though, that Fitz can be frustrating because, you know, it feels so real and relatable in a way that, like, if you read for escapism, which I do often to some extent, I am reading for a kind of escapist thrill ride, or just immersion in like a different reality or life or mind. And then when it hits hard and close to home, like, and you can personally relate, like it brings out emotions that you might want to be like setting aside when you like pick up, you know, a fantasy book. So yeah, I've had my moments with Fitz where I was just like, Fitz, like at the start of Fool's Assassin, I'm like,
oh yeah,
sure, you've been like off screen living a nice like peaceful life, and he forgot like that the world is dangerous and that he has to have his guard up. And it's like at the beginning, like these suspicious people come and everyone thinks they're suspicious and he thinks they're suspicious, but he's like, I'm gonna ignore them.
It's fine.
And
it's not a big deal.
Like I was like,
Fitz, you know, you're in a fantasy book, right? Come on.
But that was just like a more fun example of just like Fitz being so realistic. Like, yeah, like that is a very realistic thing. Like people make mistakes in judgment all the time because they're just like, they don't want to deal with something.
Yeah,
you know, they want to.
I would argue like the vast majority of judgments are mistakes. So
Oh, totally. Oh my god, so true. You're right. Hobb is hit so hard with all of that, which is why like I've loved Elderlings, but I want to read everything else she's written too. Like have you read the other stuff, Soldier Sun trilogy or the Lindholm books?
No, I haven't. I was hoping I could save them for, you know, for it.
Yeah, no, there's something special about like having a real kind of treasured author where it's like you have more books from them. Yeah, if you used all of them up, there's kind of like a
you can only read something once. So
it's nice to kind of have stuff in reserve.
So then give me something spicy. Give me like a spicy opinion that you have.
Ooh, okay. Let's see. What would be something of a hot take? Let's see. That's a good question. I mean, I DNF'd Book of the Ancestor really early, and you read this actually recently, right? Like
very recently.
I could not connect to the writing style, the plotting, the POV character Nona. Like none of it was engaging to me, and I actually learned later that Lawrence is like, I think the word is aphantasia, like a pretty like strong case of it, where he doesn't visualize things like in his mind's eye, like he doesn't picture things. And there's definitely a subset of readers like in even the fantasy community who talk online about having this and like that they don't visualize as they read. And Lawrence like doesn't visualize, and I learned that after the fact, but it makes so much sense because I found it so hard to visualize anything as I was reading or listening to that book. I was trying both formats, and like I feel like he wasn't setting scenes very clearly, and like just I couldn't get immersed in the plot and the world, and like then we just ended up at this kind of like girls' school, and it felt kind of like YA-ish plot where like these girls was just about like these little social squabbles of these like
some drama
of these like of these preteen girls, and it was like, man, I'm just not into this at all. Like, so I don't know that I would say that, like, I could see that it was probably going to go in some interesting places, but like I was having such a bad time with book one. Was that Red Sister? Yeah, Red Sister. That I DNF'd it like less than halfway through. So there's something of a spicy take. I just could not connect with the writing style. I didn't think it was awful, but it wasn't providing me like the kind of immersive, engaging experience that I was like, you know what, this is just, if I'm gonna push through, I don't think it's just gonna work. So I'm gonna bail early, and I rarely DNF. So that was a rough one. Let's
fair.
see some other spicy ones. Like, I don't know that I have any crazy takes. Oh yeah, go for it.
I remember one of yours because I kind of agreed with it.
Yeah.
Sword of Kaigen.
Oh yeah, not loving Sword of Kaigen. Yeah, like I often in our fandom of modern fantasy and sci-fi, like you see a lot of passionate reactions to certain books. Like people just throwing books as their favorite of the year, or on their favorites list, or favorite series list, or like I've seen so many gushes of Sword of Kaigen over the last bunch of years, like where people were falling head over heels in love with it. And yeah, I did not particularly, I guess my spicy take was that I did not fall in love with the character of Misaki. Like people say like, oh, they fall in love with the book and the character work, especially Misaki, this mother figure. And the book actually starts. Have you read it?
I read it.
Oh, it starts. I thought it was going to be like all Misaki's point of view, but it starts like a dual structure switching up. And I was much more attached and engaged with the son's POV, Mamoru. Like
Mamoru.
I was enjoying those chapters much more than with Misaki. I don't think Misaki's like perspective really cohered into something engaging and interesting and organic until like that more than halfway through, when we hit that chapter with the duel with like and then then I started to see like, okay, I see why people got really invested in this character, but it didn't really happen until late in the book for me, where her marriage was starting to be explored in a deeper way. And I think one kind of like dropped the ball with the husband character, like by not making him more interesting to the reader or more deep and less like of a caricature earlier. Like I had trouble getting invested in that whole domestic plotline. So you said you were kind of agreeing with me on my Sword of Kaigen takes.
Yeah. I mean, it's like I understand why people love it so much. It didn't quite work so well for me. I think for me it was actually throughout the book I did not gel with the dialogue, which sounds funny, but it's like the moment characters started talking, it was just like, what? Like, people don't talk like this. I don't know. I just didn't gel with the dialogue. And I remember
the dialogue and the unnatural info dumps that happened in dialogue, or like story, like people were telling long stories, which was a kind of dialogue. And like it felt very inorganic or unnatural.
I don't know, that just, it was one of those ones that I side read, and like I've been struggling side reading, like even with the Greenbone Saga, which I've been enjoying but also kind of had some issues with, and it's, I think, partially just because of that editor brain is not turning off, which is not to say that I'm a better writer than ML Wong, like no way, like, you know, she's obviously very, very accomplished and successful, but I think like for me it didn't quite work. And like I think like she's really into anime and manga, and the story kind of felt like a love letter to anime manga, which is great. Like I used to love anime manga when I was a bit younger, and I think as I grew up, it's kind of like the tropes don't work as well for me when I'm older.
But there's kind of exaggerated character interactions.
Exactly. I think that's a good way to put it. And I remember there was like her younger son, he's like, I'm always following in his footsteps or something like that. I'll always be following. I don't remember, but it was like It sounds like something out of Naruto. But anyway, I mean, I appreciate it for what it was. It was like a 3-star-ish for me, but it was a good book. There were moments which were really good, like the climax scene halfway through the battle. Like, wow, that was so.
I love that battle scene. I love that battle scene, but yeah, I wasn't loving the kind of world building she was doing. It just wasn't fully coherent for me. And
time units,
and then I hated that. I hated that. Like, it was so unnecessary. I'm like, is there no like alpha reader, or like, are you not showing this book to anyone? That is the first thing any reader would probably say to or like, I don't know if she had anyone kind of edit for her, be an alpha reader or beta reader, but like, that just seems like the kind of thing that someone has to help her out to try to edit that out of the books. That was so unnecessary. Or maybe she got advice and she was just like, no, that's what I want to do. That's my style of world building and prose. But like, I hated that fair. every time I heard a made up time unit, it took me out of the story. And like, I don't know what that means. And it's getting in the way, because like, that's not immersive world building in a way that's making me feel like this is like a different world and time and place. Like, I just felt like it was an author trying to like do fantastical world building. Like I it loses my suspension of disbelief, which I don't think is ever really, a good thing to happen. Yeah. Like, you want things to feel organic for the world and based on language choices that the modern reader would be expecting, or I don't know. That just did not. They kept on coming up. Like, it wasn't just like a one-time thing. Like, they were happening throughout the whole book. Right. Those stupid time units that she came up with. It was just so unnecessary. Like, there was the info dumps that happened that were so awkward. And for a lot of reasons, it wasn't firing on all cylinders. Like, but I mean, like, the thing is, like, I love that so many people love it, right? Like, it's a book that's like really touched a lot of people. So that's awesome. Like, I wish it had worked for me. It didn't. That's fine. But there's a huge audience for, I think, there's a huge audience for, I think, this more exaggerated style of story and character and dialogue. Like, that's a little bit cheesy. Like, there's a huge audience for this. Like, like the audience for anime and manga is like huge, and like Will White. So I've read the Cradle series. I don't know if you've read any Cradle, but like he's like talks about being directly inspired by Naruto, like world building and style, and like I actually didn't grow up watching this kind of stuff, and so like reading Cradle, like, it was not working for me. Like, I did not ever fall in love with Cradle, but like it took me like 6 books to really start to even feel like I was enjoying it at all, like, and feeling immersed. Like, it was such an exaggerated, unrealistic style and a little bit cheesy, and like, and the action was very kind of cheesy and exaggerated, and like, that's not where my preferred kind of style. Like, but I think there's a huge audience for it. Like, it's really popular, and it's great that people love it and connect to it. So there's room different for all of these different styles.
Right. So it's awesome.
So there's a hot take. I'm trying to think of other hot takes. Like, a lot of my ones that I dislike are not that spicy of a take. Like, I hated the direction Lightbringer went and absolutely despised books 4 and 5.
That's a very popular take.
That's a pretty popular take. But my more unpopular take is that, like, book 4 was already just hot garbage, and like it wasn't the ending that did the series in. It was like already off the rails before book 5. Like, he just lost the plot with that one. I do have a spicy take. I have a genuinely unpopular opinion, and it's one of my only ones. Like, I would say not liking book 2 of the Poppy War is a little bit unpopular, because people tend to like that second book, Dragon Republic, but I thought book 1 was stronger. But okay, I have my hot take for you. And I'm not saying the book was bad. This is just a spicy opinion in terms of it's not the common experience. I did not like The Lies of Locke Lamora. And I feel like that's almost heretical to say in the modern fantasy fandom.
Yeah, that is.
I will qualify this with that I loved book 2, Red Seas Under Red Skies.
That's
so,
even more rare.
Yeah. So usually the way it is with like 99% of people, they fall in love with book one, Lies of Locke Lamora. They love it to death and say like it's like a downhill from there with books 2 and 3. Like
Yeah.
book 2 people like tend to like, but not as much, and then book 3 not as much as book 2. Like so they just like each book less. I have not read book 3 yet, but man, Lies of Locke Lamora just did not work for me. Have you read that one?
I am not, but I was hoping to. And
oh no, you will probably like it much more than I did. I think I still cannot understand why I did not mesh with that, because
did you
a year
audio it?
later, yeah, I audioed it fully. Okay. I didn't even try it in print. I didn't have the print book.
Because I heard the audiobook's really good.
Oh, it is good. It is good. Michael Page is perfect for it. Like
yeah.
he does this very over the top kind of fun voicing, which is perfect. It is right for the series. And I actually loved the audio for Red Seas Under Red Skies. And I like the audio. Like I like the narration. So in this case, it was definitely like the books were very differently plotted, and they also took place in different settings. And they're very different feeling books, which is why it's common to see people loving book 1 and like not book 2 as much.
Right.
But like, man, I almost DNF'd the series. Like I if I didn't already own book 2 and 3 that I had picked up like at mass market at some point, I would have DNF'd the series. I think I wouldn't have even given it a try. I'm so glad I did, because I loved Red Seas. But man, book 1 people love. Like people go crazy for it. Like
yeah,
and they recommend it all the time for other people.
It's like in everyone's like top 10 lists and everything.
Yeah, so. I thought the character work there was really on the weaker side for like the main characters and the POV characters.
Wow.
Like okay. I thought there was a massive leveling up in the character writing for the main duo, Locke and Jean, in book 2.
Damn.
Like
okay.
Locke is almost like a cipher. Like he's almost like, and maybe purposefully so, like he's very little personality that you can latch onto in book 1. And Jean too, like just doesn't get as much page time or like as I would have liked for like this core duo that people were raving about, this core duo. But I think a lot of that is coming from them having read maybe like all of the books, and they think about how this duo maybe has grown together and evolved, and they've spent more time with them. But just in book 1, you don't get like that much like great duo time. And like some of my favorite characters from that are more of just like these side characters that didn't get a lot of page time. And there are a couple, like Father Chains is often cited as a great character. Like I did love Father Chains from book 1. And if you do book 1, like I'm sure you're going to fall in love with some of these characters too. But like the main characters I did not connect to. And he does this heavy flashback plotting where like you get these long flashbacks throughout the book where it's like interrupts the present day narrative to go do a flashback of like where did they Locke or Jean, like where did they like learn something or develop a certain skill or learn a piece of knowledge that is going to help them right in this present day moment. And like he does that a lot, and a couple of the flashbacks were engaging and worked for me, but some of the others just like completely fell flat and did not add anything and just interrupted the narrative, and in a way that kept on just like halting my momentum with it and my progress. And then to kick like what's the word, to clinch it all together, like the main antagonist of book 1 I did not find interesting, and I felt was inorganic and weird world building involved with it, and just like it, I don't think he struck the right tonal balance. Like things got more brutal and gritty than I think really made sense for this story. And like the overarching like heist plot that's kind of driving this thing like went too long for me, and like not like almost nothing about book 1 worked for me. Wow. Like the setting too, like this kind of fantastical version of Venice, like I didn't find that really interesting. I don't think he did much with it. So the setting wasn't doing much. He is very clever. Like he does great, like clever, witty prose and dialogue, like Abercrombie-esque. So in that way, I think there's almost like there's going to be enough clever wordplay and dialogue that like, even if these other elements don't work for you, there's going to be lots of great value there in this book. But so much just did not work. Like usually when I'm loving a book, everything's clicking. Like, I am not analytical. I'm just like along for the ride. I'm loving everything. I'm loving being immersed in the world. The plotting is suspenseful, intense. I care about what's happening. I'm invested in the characters. I'm empathizing with them. Like, none of that was happening with Lies of Locke Lamora for me.
Right.
But plot twist, that all happened in book 2, Red Seas Under Red Skies. Like, we're in a completely different plot. We're going to a different setting. And then once we get out on like a ship and we're out on the ocean, like something just clicked with the storytelling in a way that I fell in love with the writing and the characters. And like, I thought now this clever prose and dialogue was in service of a worthwhile story that was absent from book 1. And I thought like the plotting in book 2 was so intricate and clever, and the reveals were awesome. And like, in a way, like, it delivered so many things that book 1 just did not, and fell flat for me.
That's actually really good to hear, because like everyone says that book 1 is good. So if you didn't like it, that's fine. I can ignore you. And then a lot of people say that book 2 is not good, but you said that it is good, and therefore I can listen to you in that case.
Yeah.
So I can be very selective.
Yeah. Just selectively ignore me, and then listen when it'll help with the expectations.
Yeah.
The opinions on this series are all over the place though, because like, yeah, people love book 1, or in my case didn't like, and then usually people say like book 3 is the weakest one. Like, I am so fascinated to see what happens in book 3, and then I think he's gonna start releasing more books in the series soon, because he's had crippling anxiety about like releasing his books.
Yeah,
which is like he's written them, but he just doesn't want to release them or have the ability to like release them to the public. But I think he is gonna. He said he's in a better mental health place, and so we might start to get more of the books of that series, because I think the plan was for like 7 books, maybe 7 novels. But like that one's gonna be fascinating no matter what. Like, he is such a clever, like, smart writer, and with witty dialogue and like some crazy plot twists and like mystery elements that like, I think no matter what, you're gonna get entertained in these books at the very least.
I'm looking forward to it.
So like that I'll be very interested to see your reaction to Lies when you do it. And the audio is a delight. Like, Michael Page has a lot of fun with it. Like, he's perfect for it. So yeah, I think you'll have a good time. That's probably my there we go. There's my spicy take. Do you have any particularly spicy one?
I feel like Sword of Kaigen was my spicy one. I feel like I already spiced it up here.
Yeah. No, that's a good one. If you end up not liking Song of Achilles, that would be a good spice. That book is beloved. That book is beloved. Like on the level of Piranesi, like in terms of modern fantasy standalones, like from the 2000s, from the 21st century, like I feel like Piranesi and Song of Achilles are the two just like mega popular ones that were just like, I've never seen a negative word said about either of these books. And they've been read by so many people. Like, usually when books get widely read, like you'll see lots of haters, like for Sanderson or people just not loving like John Gwynne as much as, the popular, opinion is. But but with Piranesi, I've never seen a bad word said about Piranesi, and I've never seen anyone say anything negative about Song of Achilles either. I haven't looked too hard. I could go to Goodreads and click on the 1-star or 2-star filters and see, but I have not come across and I watch a lot of BookTube. I am constantly scrolling Goodreads, my home feed and everything. So like, I think there's, if you have a spicy take on Song of Achilles, like what's nice about reading popular things is that like so many other people have read them that it just gives you more that you can talk with anyone about. And so like there's an advantage of reading the popular books that you'll have a shared context with, just kind of likely with anyone in the fandom. Whereas like with Empire of Salt, you can talk to me and Kyle about Empire of Salt.
I mean, I'm glad you did, right? We had a good chat about it. So.
Oh yeah. No, it's so great. I'm so glad you read that, because like reading a book and loving it alone is one thing, but like my understanding of what was working in that series just got enriched by hearing you gush about it so eloquently. Like so yeah, being able to share and it's one of the great things about this online fantasy fandom. And so I love that you came out. I'll probably call it night here soon, because my wife's gonna be angry. We don't if I don't close up shop and get to bed here. But this was so awesome. I'm so glad that I was your first ever YouTube BookTube appearance.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
This is just the first of many, though. We'll have you back on, and we'll have some book chats. We'll have to hash out some things about our reads, and I definitely I feel like I never have any time to actually fit in new stuff into my TBR, but I am going to move heaven and earth to read Riven Earth and to give your series a go. But I am very passionate about my reads, and I'm pretty confident I'm gonna like it because our tastes line so much and what's important to us in our reads. But if it doesn't go well, I won't shout on my channel about how much I hated it. I'll keep that on the down low. But I have a good feeling though that it's gonna go well. And when you're reading a new series, a new author, like, it's always a risk. You're going out on a limb. You don't know if it's gonna work, and that's one of the joys, is discovering new styles and new authors and new ways of seeing the world. And so
I mean, I think what I would say is, like, absolutely no obligation to read it, man. Like, it would mean the world to me if you did, but like, no obligations there at all. But like, if you do end up reading it and like you don't want to DNF it after like 10-15%, then like, or what I should say, if you want to DNF it after 10-15%, that's okay too. Like, it's fine. You can tell me about it, we'll talk, but like, it's all good. It's all good.
It's just amazing that you have a completed novel out there, and really too, that you have the second one ready to go soon, right? You're going to release the second one next month, maybe. That you have a completed series, like, that is amazing. Like, the accomplishment that is just wondrous, and something I truly could not imagine myself doing. So just congratulations to you for doing that over the course of the last couple of years. It sounds like it totally consumed your life, and and so maybe now you'll be able to more easily fall into some new books and series, and so we got a couple picks for you. We got what do we have for the TBR, the Benghis TBR?
So we have Song of Achilles in print, and then we have The Magicians in audio, and Becoming a Druid in audio. So I think I'm gonna read these guys, and then I'll bug you, and I'll be like, "Yo, Ben, can we talk?" And then we'll go over them.
Oh yeah, let's have a check-in about how that all goes for sure. Oh, I'd love that. I'd love that. Oh man, and just like you were saying, no pressure. Like, if you don't end up liking any of those, feel free to DNF. Feel free to hate them. It'll be fun to chat about our different opinions, takes, right? if we have them. Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, it's great to have different takes. Everyone has their own artistic taste, and that's totally okay to value different things and to love different things. And that's one of the great joys. It'd be boring here on BookTube if we all just had the same exact taste and opinions on everything. So
for sure. Great. Yeah.
Well, thanks
so
for
much,
coming on.
Absolutely.
And thanks everyone in the chat that was here. And if you're watching on replay, we love you, and we'll see you next time.